Hearing what Doflamingo said, Kuzan thought it made sense for a while. But he also knew what Sengoku Admiral was thinking. First of all, he wanted to discuss Doflamingo. So that Doflamingo knows that although you played tricks on the old man on Cress Island, if the old man really wants to punish you, he can also punish you. Just like this time, although starting from the actual situation, there is no special need for your combat power, but I just want to call up and arrange for you. How can you take me? If you have the guts, refuse to be recruited. As long as you dare to refuse to be recruited, we Marine will dare to abolish your status as 7 warlords of the sea. But it is impossible for Kuzan to say this to Doflamingo directly, otherwise it would be too embarrassing. Therefore, Kuzan said vaguely, after all, you are the leader of the new world now. I heard that your Donquixote family has great energy in the dark world. We naval headquarters also hope to use your intelligence network to find Douglas Bullet as soon as possible. In addition, this is the first time that the 7 warlords of the sea have joined forces with our Marine. It is also a means of publicity. In the first half of the sentence, Doflamingo reluctantly agreed, but in the second half of the sentence, Doflamingo secretly smiled. Means of publicity? What is the promotion? It is very easy to publicize that your Marine wants to mobilize the 7 warlords of the sea, so it seems that your Marine is more powerful, right? Doflamingo has already sensed Sengoku's disgusting old clapper through the call-up order written by himself. In that case, I have no reason to refuse. Doflamingo responded softly. Seeing that Doflamingo was convinced, Kuzan said with a smile, then, if it's convenient, why don't you come with me? When the Buster call is launched, no ships from foreign forces are allowed to enter. For this operation, it's best that you can share warships with our Marine. Doflamingo didn't answer the call, and suddenly asked, Kuzan Vice Admiral, what day is today? Kuzan froze for a moment, then said, see Circle Calendar March 16, 1502, what's wrong? Oh. Doflamingo grinned and said with an evil smile, the World Summit held every 4 years will be held at the end of this year, right? As the King of Dressrosa, I also received an invitation from Marie Joyce, but you know, the new world is too chaotic, and I have many enemies. If I go to Marie Joyce from here, the journey is dangerous, and I will definitely need your Marines to guard it. Kuzan froze for a moment, his expression suddenly stiffened. Seeing Kuzan's stiff expression, Doflamingo is in a very happy mood. Why are you here to pretend to be aggressive? And Sengoku, if you really want to hate each other, then come. Before Kuzan came back to his senses, Doflamingo continued. You know, because of my identity, I have some conflicts with your Marines, and I'm not very familiar with other Marines, so if possible, I'm going to apply to Marie Joyce this time, and let my old acquaintance Sengoku Admiral be my guard. How? Hearing this, Kuzan quickly came back to his senses, and said in a deep voice, impossible, Mr. Sengoku, as a Marine Admiral, does not take on the role of guard when Marie Joyce opens World Summit, but needs to guard Marie Joyce and participate in World Summit on behalf of Marine. Of course Doflamingo also knew about this, so he was not surprised, pretending to understand, nodded and said, I see, there is still such a rule, so if Admiral can't come. How about you? Kuzan Vice Admiral. To be honest, among the Marines, whoever comes to serve as Doflamingo's bodyguard will be humiliated. So Kuzan is naturally very unhappy. Of course, he also knew that Doflamingo brought up these matters at this time, just to counter their Marine's behavior just now. So Kuzan didn't answer the call and fell silent. It can be regarded as a certain degree of softness. Seeing this, Doflamingo smiled, and didn't continue to press anything, and said, now, it is still in the stage of hunting for Bullet, so if I leave with you, will I go to Naval Headquarters Marineford to stand by? No. Seeing that Doflamingo didn't continue the topic just now, Kuzan was relieved, and said in a normal tone this time, according to the information we have at Marine, there is a high probability that Bullet is floating in New World, and we have already touched some tails, so Buster Call's fleet has already arrived at New World G1 Marine Base for repairs and can be put into missions at any time. Therefore, if you go with me this time, you should go to our G1 base as a guest. G1. Doflamingo rubbed his chin, also curious. This place will become the new naval headquarters in the future. It can also be seen from the label that G1 Marine Base is the most important marine base in New World, serving as the head of New World Marine. If Doflamingo remembers correctly, if it weren't for the embarrassment of this generation's Marine Admiral, one vacant and one retired, then in fact, new WORLD G1 Marine Base. It is to sit in an admiral for a long time, specially responsible for dealing with various things in the New World. After thinking for a while, Doflamingo said, here in the Dark World, I will use our Donquixote family relationship to cooperate with your Marine to find the trace of Bullet. As for going to G1, if you are not in a hurry, you can wait for me at the port for a few days. I still have some government affairs to deal with. In the absence of intelligence information, Kuzan is really not in a hurry. At the same time, he is also curious about Rosa. This time he briefly contacted Doflamingo, and he found that Doflamingo does not seem to be the stereotyped pirate he imagined. Seriously, that made Kuzan a little bit more interested in Doflamingo too. It's okay to wait for you for a few days, but during this period, can I be active in Rosa? Kuzan asked after thinking about it. Yes. Doflamingo said with a smile. Aside from my pirate status, I am the king of a franchise country under the government of the world. Of course, Marine is very welcome to be active in our Rosa. Kuzan always felt that Doflamingo's attitude towards him was a bit strange. After all, he heard from Sengoku Admiral that Doflamingo hated Marine. But Kuzan felt that Doflamingo doesn't seem to hate him. There is no evidence, it's just an instinctive feeling. After chatting for a while, Kuzan had nothing to say to Doflamingo, and he was going to visit the city of Rosa, so he left soon. After Kuzan left, Diamanti came in from nowhere, looked at Doflamingo and said, Dover, if you don't like that Marine, let me help you get rid of him. I don't know what's going on, maybe it's because of the hot fruit. In short, Diamanti seemed to dislike Kuzan from the first time he saw him. Doflamingo smiled and waved his hands. Let's spare his life, Diamanti. Diamanti nodded again, and after thinking about it, he said, is there something special about him? Huh? Why do you say that? Doflamingo asked a little strangely. Because it's rare for you to be so tolerant to a Marine, and even allow him to walk in Rosa. Diamanti responded naturally. Doflamingo rubbed his chin, thought for a while, and said with a smile, indeed, he is a special Marine. Because he is likely to become Marine's admiral in the future. I heard that he, Sakazuki, and Paluzolino, the master is the admiral seedling that Marine puts high hopes on, Diamanti said. No. Doflamingo shook his head and said, it's nothing to be a Marine admiral, but it's interesting to be able to step down from the position of Marine admiral. Over the past few decades, there are only two people who have voluntarily resigned from the position of Marine admiral, one is Zephyr and the other is Kuzan. And without exception, these two former Marine admirals, after leaving Marine, have brought a heavy blow to Marine. Zephyr almost blew up the entire New World, and Kuzan joined the Blackbeard Pirates directly and became a general. Later, he even joined the members of the Blackbeard Pirates and almost killed Garp on Hive Island. Needless to say, Zephyr hated pirates so much, even if he really fell out with Marine, he wouldn't cooperate with Doflamingo. And Kuzan is different. Kuzan can go along with Teach, why can't he make progress together with his young master? As for the reason behind what Kuzan did, it doesn't really matter. In many cases, no matter what the reason is, as long as you take that crucial step, there is often no turning back. Kuzan may want to use Teach to achieve some purpose, or his goal is Teach, so he chose this path. But if you think about it carefully, why doesn't Teach want to use Kuzan to do something? In the final analysis, this kind of thing, in the end, still depends on whose wrist is stronger. Sakazuki is a rock to lift Marine and why isn't Kuzan? Doflamingo murmured. Although Diamanti was a little confused about what her young master meant, but seeing that the young master had no intention of explaining, she finally stopped asking. G1 Marine Base. Different from the usual Marine base, the construction specifications of the G1 Marine Base are quite powerful, and it can be said to be at the same level as the Naval Headquarters Marineford in the first half of the Grand Line. According to some rumors that have not been confirmed by Marine, when Marine built the G1 Marine Base, it was planning to implement a dual-track system. That is to say, G1 and Marineford will be established side by side as the headquarters of Marine. But I don't know why, but I didn't follow this set, but no matter what, G1 has a special meaning for Marine, and no one can deny this. In the original story, after Sakazuki became the new Marshal of Marine, with the power of defeating the Whitebeard pirates in the top battle, he transferred naval headquarters from Marineford to G1 in one go. On the one hand, this is because Marineford was directly dried up by Whitebeard into a fragmented island, because of a big war. No matter from which point of view, it is not suitable to assume the important responsibility of naval headquarters. On the other hand, Sakazuki is far more radical than Sengoku. After sweeping away the mountain of Whitebeard, Sakazuki, as the new marshal, hopes to eliminate all the great pirates in the entire New World. Transferring naval headquarters from Paradise to New World is to carry out this will. Kuzan's warship returned to G1 today. On the watchtower in the harbor, the serial number of the Kuzan warship was quickly determined, and the guard was lifted. At this time, Doflamingo was standing on the deck of the warship, looking at the majestic G1 Marine Base in the distance. It was indeed amazing. In the harbor, there are countless coastal defense guns, large and small. The Tower City-style fortress, which is comparable in size to the Justice Fortress of Malinford, stands in the middle of the island. There are two large characters G engraved on the wall. It has to be said that in terms of aura, Marine really handles the word sea supremacy firmly. Even Doflamingo, after seeing the G1 base at this time, can deeply feel that Marine is not easy to mess with and has a profound heritage. And the G1 Marine base is located in the sea area of the New World Gateway. Most of the pirates who have broken into the New World have a chance if they want to come and pay their respects. If you happen to be overwhelmed by the momentum of this G1, you are likely to meet Marine in the future, so you will be short by 3 points first. How? Our Marine is at the core of New World. Kuzan walked up to Doflamingo and asked with a smile. Some time ago, Kuzan lived in Dressrosa for nearly a week. He made a lot of investigations on Dressrosa overtly and secretly, and also made detailed observations on the Donquixote family. Judging from Kuzan's perception of pirates, he feels that it is really difficult for him to regard the Donquixote family headed by Doflamingo as a pirate group, because it is almost completely inconsistent with the definition of pirates. But Kuzan can also feel that they may not be pirates, but they are definitely not good people. Of course, Kuzan thinks this is quite normal. What also makes him a little puzzled is that whether it is Sengoku Admiral or Suru's chief staff, they all said that Doflamingo is inherently evil and there is no cure. But I don't know if Doflamingo is hiding it too well, or there is some misunderstanding in it. In short, Kuzan doesn't think that Doflamingo is so evil and terrifying. At least in his interaction with Doflamingo this time, he didn't feel that way. In most cases, Doflamingo behaves more like an elegant nobleman, king of Dressrosa. Very powerful, Doflamingo praised frankly. Soon, the warship stopped in the naval port, and Doflamingo and Kuzan got off the warship together. The broadcast in the port quickly broadcast the incident. His Royal Highness 7 Warlords of the Sea Don Quixote Doflamingo has arrived at the port pier. Repeat, 7 Warlords of the Sea Don Quixote. It has to be said that no matter how much naval headquarters dislikes 7 Warlords of the Sea, there are still all the necessary etiquette. In the original story, before the war in Marineford, the 7 Warlords of the Sea arrived at naval headquarters and enjoyed a very high reception. From the perspective of the administrative levels of the members of the world government, the 7 Warlords of the Sea organization is on a par with the naval headquarters, and the regulation of this organization in the world government is very high. At the same time, because there is no unified leader, but they are all very powerful, so in terms of treatment levels, 7 Warlords of the Sea theoretically enjoys equal treatment with Marine Admiral. If 7 Warlords of the Sea can have a leader, it should be at the same level as Marshal Marine. Of course, nowadays, 7 Warlords of the Sea is only Doflamingo, and his treatment is Admiral level. The most straightforward manifestation is that once Doflamingo is invited to any institution under the world government, the institution will treat him with the attitude of welcoming Marine Admiral. When we arrived at the port, it was already noon, so Kuzan led Doflamingo into the VIP restaurant in the G1 tower as we got off the ship. Then, the food will be served soon, and I will hand over the task first. You can rest here first, Kuzan said to Doflamingo. I really haven't enjoyed Marine's food, Furoforafor, don't worry about me, Doflamingo said with a smile. Kuzan nodded, but when he was about to leave the restaurant, he couldn't help turning his head and wanting to give some advice, but before he could speak, Doflamingo said calmly, don't worry, as long as you Marines don't have any disrespectful guys to provoke me, I won't cause trouble here. Seeing this, Kuzan stopped talking and left quickly. After a while, a large number of Marine kitchen staff appeared in the restaurant, spreading all kinds of delicacies on the long table in front of Doflamingo at an extremely fast speed. Doflamingo was also polite. He was indeed a little hungry, so he sat on the chair on the spot, opened a bottle of red wine, and started cooking directly. Or it can be said that the treatment given by Marine is very high. Doflamingo is eating here, and there are even people from Marine cutting his cigars and pouring wine beside him. The effect of this service is almost comparable to his own maid team. Just as Doflamingo put a piece of roasted sea beast meat into his mouth, a figure walked in from the restaurant door. She is a beautiful woman, she should be less than 30 years old, with a slim figure and exquisite appearance, wearing a pink suit, a justice cloak with rear admiral epaulettes, and a saber hanging on her waist. Doflamingo recognized him at a glance. This is the future Marines Admiral candidate Momisagi Gion. Looking at the epaulettes, she seems to be rear admiral. Why did she actually participate in the action as one of the Buster Call 5 vice admirals this time? Did she make a mistake? Doflamingo looked at Gion with slightly puzzled eyes, and Gion also looked at Doflamingo with some curiosity. Want to have something to eat together? Doflamingo was the first to invite. The two sides didn't introduce anything to each other. Doflamingo felt that it was unnecessary, So if he was invited here, would Marine know him? Guillaume felt that it was meaningless to introduce himself to the pirates. After hearing this, Guillaume frowned and said, "You don't think that all the meals here are prepared for you alone? It's such a long table. Mr. Sengoku and the others will come later." Doflamingo was stunned for a moment when he heard the words, looked at the few dishes that had already been ruined by him at this time. His face twitched a little and said, "When Kuzan left before, with." Speaking of this, Doflamingo was silent again. Maid, he suddenly remembered that what Kuzan said was that the dishes would be served soon, let him rest here, and did not say that these were all prepared for him. But when he said such a thing at that time, everyone would misunderstand it, right? And the waiters at Marine. They didn't stop me, and even poured wine for me. It was absolutely amazing. Sure enough, just as Doflamingo fell into a bewildered silence in embarrassment, there was another burst of footsteps in the corridor of the restaurant. Afterwards, Doflamingo saw his good brother Sengoku Admiral walking in together with a group of Marines bigwigs. General Staff Suru was there, Garp was there, and Sakazuki, who was beaten up by himself on Sky Island, was also there, with a stinking face. Of course Paluzolino and Kuzan also came too. As soon as everyone came in, they saw that Doflamingo was already sitting at the table at this time, and some meals had been started. They were a little confused for a while. Doflamingo glared at Kuzan fiercely with resentful eyes. Kuzan scratched his head, wondering why he stared at me. Cough. Sengoku Admiral coughed lightly and said, "It seems that everyone is hungry, so let's eat first, let's talk while eating." The tables are long enough to accommodate more people dining together. But for some reason, this guy Garp insisted on sitting next to Doflamingo, so he made a half circle, walked over to Doflamingo and pulled the chair next to him to sit down. Doflamingo turned his head to look at Garp beside him with some doubts. His expression seemed to ask, "What are you doing?" Garp said carelessly, "Last time in Logtown, I let you run away, let's compare now." Doflamingo frowned. Is he planning to attack me? But before Doflamingo could respond, Garp waved his hand and said, "Let's compete. Who eats more?" Doflamingo was silent for a while, and then asked, "By the way, how old is Mr. Garp this year?" 58. What's the matter? Garp responded naturally. Seeing that Garp didn't react, Chief Staff Suru couldn't help but said, "People are saying that you are quite old, why are you still so naive?" Sengoku Admiral picked up the teacup on the table, took a sip and said, "Let's talk about the business. Doflamingo, how much do you Donquixote family know about Douglas Bullet?" Doflamingo wiped his mouth with a tissue, and said softly, "In the past few days, many people in the Dark World have been looking for him. The last time I saw information was on Hive Island, which is Ochaku's territory. But unexpectedly, Bullet didn't have any conflict with Ochaku. It seems that after a simple replenishment, he left." General Staff Suru put his hands together, propped his chin and said, "It's almost the same as the information we have obtained so far. New World, Circumference Island. This island is very peculiar, not because of the climate, not because of the culture, but because of the shape of the island, which is a standard circle." At the harbor pier, a burly figure stepped off a cargo ship. The boss of the ship saw the figure disappear into the harbor, and then suddenly heaved a sigh of relief, wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, "Finally sent this monster away. We are still alive." A sailor said as if he was still alive after a catastrophe. "That's right, the one who just left this cargo ship is the successor of the ghost, Douglas Bullet. From the current point of view, Bullet's reputation is far worse than most pirates. Because this guy is going to carry out a devastating massacre at every turn, and the number of people who died directly and indirectly at his hands must be more than 100 or 200,000. This kind of evil party, even if it is placed among pirates, is extremely cruel and tyrannical. Because of this, he has a strong deterrent effect on the general public. After being forced to board the boat at first, the boat boss still felt that he was doomed for this trip. Didn't expect to survive? "Boss, shall we rest now?" asked one of the sailors. The boss of the ship slapped the sailor on the head suddenly and said, "Have you lived enough? That guy may go berserk at any time and slaughter the entire island as a big pirate. Now we know that he is on this island, but we still want to rest here? Get out of here quickly." "Boss, do you want to say hello to Marine? It is said that Marine is searching everywhere for his whereabouts, a definite information, at least the Earth will be profitable," said the 10 sailors. The boss of the ship was moved for a moment, but finally shook his head and said, "No, we should not get involved in these things, and if Marine finds out about that Bullet guy has been sailing with us for more than half a month, I'm afraid we will also be under strict scrutiny. Then we will lose more." When the other sailors heard it, it seemed the same thing happened. Don't take the money by then, and people will take it in. In this way, soon, the cargo ship left the Circle Island. Douglas Bullet, The standard admiral's height is more than 3 meters, but his figure is very burly. Walking on the street, it is like a wall. His whole body is muscular, his shoulders are broad and his neck is thick. Just by looking at his appearance, he looks like a werewolf. Moreover, his upper body was only wearing a simple white 2-layer vest, which made his strong muscles stand out even more. The lower body is a pair of wear-resistant army green overalls, and the feet are a pair of tough marten boots. In terms of personal temperament alone, he doesn't look like a notorious pirate. On the contrary, he has a very strong tough guy temperament, very military. In fact, Douglas Bullet was indeed born in the army. When he was a young soldier in New World. From childhood to adulthood, he almost spent time on the battlefield. Later, due to various reasons, he was betrayed, and then went out to sea, got mixed up on Roger's boat, and then left again. Until now, he has become a lone ranger. After passing through the busy streets, he came to the central area of the island. Here is a barren mountain forest, which has not yet been developed. Bullet carried his backpack and soon entered the barren mountain alone. About 2 hours, Bullet appeared on the top of the barren mountain. He found a relatively flat rock, and sat on it carelessly, looking at the sea level in the distance from the cliff. The sun is slowly sinking below the sea surface, and there are also a lot of fire clouds in the sky. From here, the scenery is still very beautiful. Bullet's expression didn't change at all, and so did his eyes, staring blankly at the sea, like a stone carving on a cliff. After a long time, he took out a large piece of compressed biscuit from his backpack, randomly stuffed it into his mouth, unscrewed the water bottle, and swallowed it tons and tons. The scenery here is unique. Just treat this place as a vigorous burial place. Bullet wiped the water stains from the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand, and suddenly muttered to himself. In my impression, how many years ago have I forgotten? But in that year, just like today, on this island, at this location, even this flat stone has not changed much. He was also sitting here in a daze that day, not knowing what he should do next. While staring blankly at the surface of the sea, that man also came here. He seemed to be idle and bored, looking at the scenery, right? His name is Roger, Gold D. Roger. As if seeing the loneliness and confusion in himself, he invited himself to go to sea with him every day. Bullet so far, I don't know. What did I think at the beginning? Maybe I was really confused, maybe I had nothing to do and just wanted to have some fun. Anyway, he accepted Roger's invitation. Since then, the Roger Pirates have had one more ghost successor. When did I start adoring him? Bullet asked himself as he took another bite of the hard compressed biscuit. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on his body, and he thought for a while, but couldn't come up with an answer. As if unconsciously, he has already regarded Roger as his goal, as his worship object. He is so strong, so confident, and so optimistic. He has a firm goal, a definite ideal, unwavering, and the ability to implement to the end. These are what Bullet adores. In the end, I'm still no match for you, Roger, Bullet murmured softly. In this sea, he felt too much confusion. The thing he was most unlike Roger was that, from the beginning to the end, he, Douglas Bullet, didn't know what he wanted. He was in the sea, but he didn't find his own answer. That's right, Bullet at this stage is very confused, until he was caught by Marine and imprisoned in Impeldown, where he stayed for nearly 20 years. During this period, he gradually set his own goal, to become the strongest beyond Roger. And Roger is dead, so how can you win against a dead man? Bullet made a plan for himself, that is to kill all the strong men in the sea. What Marine Admiral, Marshal, 4 Emperors, 7 Warlords of the Sea, Supernova, Evil Generation, all of them must be killed. Only by killing all these strong men can his reputation resound throughout the world and completely surpass the dead Roger. That was the conclusion he came to after nearly 20 years in prison. But now Bullet doesn't have these thoughts, he just thinks that this sea, without Roger, is too boring. In the past 2 years, he had tried many things, but none of them could attract his interest. This made Bullet understand that the sea without Roger really meant nothing to him. Therefore, Bullet, who had no goal and was full of confusion, began to run wild at sea. He destroys and ravages everywhere, venting his desire for destruction. Until not long ago, he was completely tired of the sea, so he attacked Marines' Jadensburg base and slaughtered all the Marines in Jadensburg. The reason for doing such a thing is that Bullet wants to give his life a vigorous ending. He is not an idiot, he naturally knows that he will definitely anger Marine this time. Will make Marine do everything in his power to deal with him. And what he wants is such a result, the Circle Island. This is the place where he and Roger met for the first time, like a circle. In the end, he hopes to return here, on this island, to end all these fates. This island is the ending place he chose for himself. Taking another bite of the compressed biscuit, chewing the biscuit crumbs in his mouth, Bullet looked at the sun that had completely sunk under the sea, and said softly, "Come on, Marine." Coming down from the port and walking all the way to the barren mountain area, Bullet found dozens of people who seemed to have noticed his existence. Even if only half of the people here dare to provoke right and wrong, then Marine and other forces will get the information of his appearance on the Zhujiao island in the first time. So, the next thing to do is just wait. Waiting for the warships to surround the island, waiting for the Marine to find him. Then, have a hearty fight and say goodbye to this sea. Just as Bullet expected, information about his whereabouts had spread out at an extremely fast speed. G1 Marine Base, Doflamingo hadn't even finished his meal when suddenly the phone bug he was carrying rang. Under the watchful eyes of Sengoku and others, Doflamingo answered the phone very calmly. "What's the matter?" "Young master, the latest information. Douglas Bullet is currently on the Circumference Island," Senor quickly reported. Doflamingo frowned, and said softly, "Are you sure?" "Very sure." Senor responded immediately. "I see." Doflamingo smiled, hung up the phone, and looked at Sengoku Admiral and others. Doflamingo didn't hide anything from the conversation just now, so everyone at the table naturally heard it. Now, then, is the time to test Marine Admiral's decisiveness. Sengoku stared fixedly at Doflamingo, and Doflamingo had a calm smile all the time. The eyes of the two converged together, and after a while, Sengoku slammed the table and said, "Everyone is there. Start the task immediately. Everyone, go to Zhujiao Island." Sakazuki frowned. There is no definite information on the Marine side. Is it really necessary to trust Doflamingo? But he also knew that at such a time, every second was racing against time, and maybe Bullet might leave there a little later. Therefore, Sakazuki didn't object to anything, and got up immediately, ready to land on the warship and set off. Seeing Sengoku's decisive action and judgment, Doflamingo was also deeply moved. Sengoku may have suffered a few times in his hands, but he is really a very powerful character. You can't be complacent because you once had an advantage. Once you underestimate this guy, you will most likely be sanctioned by the Iron Fist of Justice. When Marine's generals arrived at the harbor and were about to board the ship, Marine's intelligence tribe took a step back and confirmed the whereabouts of Douglas Bullet. This somewhat made Sengoku's expression a bit ugly. After all, it seemed that Doflamingo and the Donquixote family were more powerful. But after thinking about it, Sengoku was relieved again. After all, Marine here has a few more steps than Doflamingo and the others. This is brought about by the system, so as not to pass any false intelligence news. So it's completely understandable to be a few minutes late. He is sure that, in terms of the accuracy of the information, Marine's information must be more precise than Donquixote family's. Perhaps the Donquixote family has confirmed Bullet's whereabouts. As for Marine, it can be traced back to what ship Bullet got off from. The quality gap here is still very large. Doflamingo doesn't know anything about Sengoku's secret comparison heart. He was just a little bit emotional. He came to G1 Marine Base, he didn't even finish his meal, and he was about to leave again. It really felt like a reason. However, as the warship left the port, Doflamingo also quickly adjusted his mentality. When I came, because I was not in a hurry, the warship wobbled from Rosa to and returned to G1. But this time, they had to rush to Joyuan Island and hold Douglas Bullet down. Therefore, the warship can be said to be fully powered, the sails are full, and the outer wheels are spinning faster. Such a huge warship sailed away through the wind and waves at an extraordinary speed. This personal experience also made Doflamingo confirm once again that among warships of the same level, the performance of warships is indeed far superior to that of other ships. The new Flamingo is about the same size as a warship, but its speed really cannot reach the same level as a warship. When he came, Doflamingo took Kuzan's boat, but now, he takes Sengoku's car. On the deck at this time, Doflamingo looked at the guns of the warship Sengoku a little strangely. After a while, Doflamingo suddenly turned his head to look at Sengoku and said, "It's really strange. The Type 702 naval gun was indeed a first-class top-deck fixed naval gun 5 years ago. It has a long range, strong power, and less harmful explosion, but..." Hearing this, Sengoku's expression darkened, and he looked really unhappy. However, see Circle Calendar 1501, that is, in the middle of last year, also came from the Kermos Military Research and Technology Center. The power and range of the latest naval gun of Type 706 are about 13% higher than that of Type 702. This is also the latest armament currently on the market. Doflamingo said softly. "What are you trying to say?" Sengoku glared at Doflamingo impatiently. Doflamingo is right. 5 years ago, the guns on the ship Sengoku were indeed top-notch, top-notch. At that time, the Cervantes were not yet familiar with it. But now, This cannon can't be said to be eliminated, but it is definitely relegated to the second line. According to what first know about Marines' armed forces have always been at the forefront of the world. Whether it is artillery, warships, standard sabers, muskets, bullets, or shells, they all use the most excellent top-level equipment in the current era. As Marine Admiral, Sengoku, your flagship should represent the most advanced configuration of Marine. In this case, the Type 706 artillery that went on sale last year has not yet been loaded, which already represents a big problem. Doflamingo smiled evilly laughed. Sengoku looked at Doflamingo's expression and felt a little regretful in his heart. It seemed that he shouldn't have been recruited. Although Marine succeeded in face, it seemed that Doflamingo had to find out because of it. It's just that I've been busy recently, so I haven't had time to replace it, Sengoku said calmly. The smile on the corner of Doflamingo's mouth became even brighter, and he said with a smile, I see. Sengoku Admiral, you are really a noble person who forgets things. Don't forget to change to the latest equipment before going out next time. Sengoku snorted coldly and didn't answer, but after hesitating for a moment, he said, speaking of, do you still have a younger brother? Doflamingo nodded calmly and said, with your Marine's intelligence capabilities, it's impossible not to know about my situation, right? Indeed, I have a fellow brother. What's wrong? I haven't seen him show up much, so I was thinking, your younger brother has the same blood as you, so is he born with the same blood as you? Sengoku said pretendingly. When Kuzan came back before, he reported to him that he saw Rosinante in dress Rosa, which made Sengoku, who had no news about Rosinante, heaved a sigh of relief. However, Kuzan said that Rosinante is eating very fat now, which made Sengoku a little confused. No, there just happened to be a chance, so he thought about setting up a conversation with Doflamingo or something. Furfurfur, falsely discussing the blood of celestial dragons. This is a capital offense, Sengoku Admiral. Doflamingo said viciously. What Sengoku said just now, to be honest, has already crossed the line a bit. What he meant basically means that Doflamingo's blood is inherently evil. And what bloodline is Doflamingo? Descendant of 20 kings. But Sengoku said calmly, I don't remember. What celestial dragons are you now? Doflamingo shrugged and didn't answer, and didn't bother to discuss Rosinante with Sengoku. Sengoku felt a little itchy, but seeing that Doflamingo was not willing to say more, he didn't dare to ask any more questions. The discussion just now was quite normal, as if it was brought up in idleness, but if he asked again, with Doflamingo's cunning and insidiousness, maybe he would have noticed something. So even though he was worried and curious, in the end, Sengoku suppressed his temptation. At this time, what Doflamingo was thinking about was not about Rosinante, but about Marine's firepower configuration. As early as more than 2 years ago, Doflamingo has been paying attention to this matter. Through his relationship on Marie Joy's, he once inquired about some information about the Marine Logistics Department. According to Doflamingo's current understanding of Marine was capable of independent manufacturing of military industry before, but over the years, these capabilities of Marine have been gradually stripped away by the world's government, and currently there is a research and development institution called the Science Force. In Doflamingo's consideration, this should be because the world government is worried that Marine will transform from a purely violent organization into a self-sufficient warlord. Therefore, the production history of Marine must be castrated. This is completely understandable, and if Doflamingo were Marie Joy's in power, he would definitely do the same. Once Marine is able to be self-sufficient and produce weapons and equipment, it will not be guaranteed, and the next step will be to directly sell them to the outside world. Once Marine can sell the arms produced by itself, there will be signs of getting rid of the control of the world government in terms of military finances. Even if it is a sign, as soon as it comes out, the meaning will be different. So this is absolutely impossible for the government of the world to accept. Nowadays, Marine's armament configuration is uniformly manufactured and purchased by the government of the world, and then distributes the equipment to Marine. Marine's warships are also outsourced and cannot be built by themselves. At most, Marine is allowed to set up a repair shop to repair damaged warships. And the outsourcing unit happened to be the capital of Seven Waters. It was this step-by-step stripping that allowed Marine to maintain pure combat attributes, and the rest of the production attributes would be quickly suppressed every time they appeared. This is the only way for the world government to deal with Marine. But it seems that because of the outbreak of the Great Pirate Era, the economic decline of various countries has also had a great impact on the fiscal revenue of the world government. Therefore, the world government is also carrying out a certain degree of open source and reduce expenditure. Open source, of course, is to find new revenue-generating points. Needless to say, it's about throttling. Maybe this time it's already on Marine's head. In the past, Marine always deploys the latest and strongest firepower on itself. This time, it's been King year. Sengoku, Admiral's warship, is still using outdated artillery, which can explain the problem very well. And this, for the Donquixote family, is an opportunity. In the original story, Doflamingo extended his hand to Marine's logistics. He bought goods from Kaido, and sold a high-tech weapon obtained from Kaido directly to the government of the world at a price lower than the market price. The government of the world buys arms from Doflamingo at a low price, so naturally they are not willing to manufacture them themselves. If they have the skills, why not buy them from Doflamingo? Coupled with some corruption and so on, in short, in just a few years, Doflamingo has changed the rationing model between the world government and Marine. From the past manufacturing by the government of the world and distributing to the Marine, it has become a purchase by the government of the world and distributed to the Marine. And he, Doflamingo, actually became Marine's arms supplier. Leaving aside the profit issue here, the influence alone is terrifying. You can see that when Doflamingo fell, the world government panicked, and quickly dispatched people from the CP agency to Wano-kuni to discuss business with Kaido, in order to continue to get arms from Kaido and ensure that Marine's firepower is sufficient. What a funny thing, the weapons and ammunition that Marine uses to destroy pirates are made by pirates. And what's even more ridiculous, the business hasn't been negotiated yet, and Kaido is also ruined. I don't know how to solve this mess in the back of the world government. But back to the main story, now, Doflamingo does not need to be a middleman at all. He can produce the latest munitions, the Type 706 naval gun, and the Donquixote family can not only copy it, Quinn even researched an upgraded version with Guy. These. Maybe you can use them to talk to the world government about the Marine's munitions supply. It doesn't matter if you can't afford it, for the sake of the friendship between our Donquixote family and the government of the world, I'm even willing to give away a batch for free, so you can use it first. As long as he can become Marine's arms supplier from the root, then everything is worthwhile. Then, the journey is far away. In order to be able to muster the energy of 120,000 points to fight Douglas Bullet to the death and be loyal to the world's government, I decided to go to rest first. Doflamingo stretched his waist. He actually has nothing to talk about with Sengoku. The two are wary of each other and have no sense of trust at all. Even if they can have a pleasant chat, it must be full of nonsense. Instead of that, it's better not to get together. Sengoku watched Doflamingo walk into the cabin unsteadily, then looked at the shipboard guns on the deck, frowned slightly, and whispered, "That guy. Did he think of some bad idea?" Although it is true that, as Doflamingo said, the Type 702 naval gun is a bit outdated, there is no doubt that there are not many forces in the sea who have installed the latest Type 706 naval gun. Because that thing is indeed expensive, and if it is not established, the suppression effect of firepower is indeed not obvious. How many forces are there in this sea that can be equipped with the latest naval guns? Moreover, most of the upgrades of the pirates' weapons are actually forced by the Marines. This point, as a veteran Marine, Sengoku is very sure and clear. There are very few pirates who will take the initiative to update their equipment. Generally, Marine equipment is too crushing, and the pirates can't stand it anymore, so they will replace the equipment that can resist Marine. So even if the Type 706 artillery did appear for more than a year, Sengoku was not in a hurry before. It doesn't matter, as long as we don't change it, the pirates will definitely not change it. If the pirates don't change the most advanced naval gun, then for us Marine, the Type 702 can still be regarded as the most advanced. Therefore, it is completely acceptable and understandable for the capital turnover of the world government to temporarily suppress the replacement of a batch of weapons. The era of the great pirates, everyone is having a hard time. This was originally an idea that Sengoku recognized in his heart, but now that Doflamingo saw this flaw, he always felt a little flustered and couldn't figure it out. What is Doflamingo going to do? First of all, Doflamingo is the 7 warlords of the sea, so in a short period of time, he has no reason or position to conflict with Marine. All loaded with the latest artillery, what's the use? Not against Marine. That doesn't have much impact on the replacement of Marine's equipment. Thinking about it from various angles, Sengoku didn't understand what this has to do with Doflamingo. Could it be, just to show off his knowledge to me? Can he understand and identify the latest military information? Sengoku patted the braided beard on his chin and muttered. From G1 to Yenjo Island, according to the normal speed, taking the new Flamingo as an example, it will take at least half a month, and this is the case without any stop or delay. But Marine's warship is really ferocious. In full speed mode, it only took less than 7 days. 10 warships have already surrounded the entire Joyuan Island. It can be seen that the efficiency is high. After the warship surrounded the island, Sengoku Admiral, who was the initiator of the Buster Call, did not immediately ring the golden phone bug, even though according to the daily intelligence summary during this period, Douglas Bullet has been staying on the island and has not left. At this time, on the deck of the warship Sengoku, under the mast, Doflamingo was sitting here, watching Sengoku standing in front of the rudder, holding a phone bug in his hand, giving his own orders. Participating in the buster call this time, being compulsorily recruited, Doflamingo was a bit annoyed at first, but afterwards, it felt really good. A long time ago, he felt that he already knew Marine very well. Doflamingo felt that he had at least a certain understanding of Marine's high-level personnel, their personalities, and the way they acted. But this time he really worked together with Marine, and after spending so many days on the warship, he really got to know Marine in depth, in fact, at the basic level, at the grassroots level. It has to be said that whether it is efficiency, discipline, mobility, or combat capability, Marine can be said to be very good and outstanding, and it is definitely the most advanced combat unit in this era. Different from those pirates who were born in the wild, they are serious and have undergone systematic training to form an elite combat force. Whether it is a battle with the wind or adversity, Marine can maintain sufficient combat effectiveness. For this alone, many pirate gangs, even the Donquixote family, cannot do it. Through chatting with some Marine soldiers, Doflamingo can also feel that the quality of soldiers is completely different. When the Donquixote family recruits younger brothers, they don't care too much about you. They are strong, able to fight, and fierce enough. But Marine, as long as they are separated from the most basic unit of soldiers, no matter whether it is a Captain Sao or a lieutenant, more or less, they all have the ability to command at least a dozen to dozens of people to fight. Take street fighting as an example. Compared with street fighting without command, the level of street fighting with command is completely different. This is also the reason why, every time Marine attacks the pirate island, it can win every battle. Because once Marine's senior generals delay the pirates' central cadres, then the struggle on the grassroots forces must be Marine's victory, thus pushing back the battlefield. These details and fundamentally exposed problems made Doflamingo ponder for a long time. Doflamingo has also become more and more determined about the concept and idea of normalizing the combat power of the Donquixote family in the militarization of Rosa. Relying on the military force formed by Yi Luzi, it may be able to form a certain advantage in the battle against Marine because of the outstanding leaders and core cadres. But this advantage is by no means truly long-lasting. Improving the quality of combat troops as much as possible, and improving the concept of combat from point-to-point cadres and generals to a struggle of overall quality, is the only way to persevere and win a steady stream of victories. Otherwise, once Marine makes up his mind to launch an all-out war against the Donquixote family, and adjust the war mode from islands to sea areas, or even the entire New World, with the excellent quality of soldiers, Marine can completely seize the advantage quickly. And Doflamingo imagined, in this case, what would happen to their Donquixote family. Maybe relying on the excellence of myself, Beckman and the rest of the cadres, I can maintain a certain advantage in the core battlefield, but what about outside the core battlefield? What about the entire sea area? What about the entire New World? It is estimated that with the fighting qualities of the Donquixote family, they will be completely defeated by Marine in no time. Once such a situation is formed, Marine will hunt the Donquixote family from all directions, avoiding the edge of the top combat power, or restraining the edge of the top combat power, and then adjust the tactical strategy to a protracted war that relies heavily on logistics supply. Then the Donquixote family will be ruined after a long time? Of course, such a tactic is also extremely stressful for Marine, and it is only possible to implement it under ideal conditions. And this set of tactics and strategies, Doflamingo thinks carefully, is suitable for most pirates, such as Big Mom pirates, such as Beasts pirates, are very practical. I am afraid that it is similar to the later Red Hair pirates, the Straw Hat pirates, and the current Whitebeard pirates. Pirates who basically do not have a fixed base camp and spend most of their time floating on the sea are much less threatening. At this moment, Doflamingo realized on a deeper level, what the F*K has called the Overlord of the Sea. Sure enough, how could the foundation accumulated by the Marine for hundreds of years be surpassed by wild pirates in 2s and 3s? Therefore, the standardization of pirates is actually the road that many big pirates are gradually embarking on. Looking at it this way, whether it is the Big Mom pirate group that is building a country and expanding its sphere of influence to form a new order, or the Beasts pirates that have captured Wano and are also accumulating strength. In fact, Kaido and Charlotte Linlin may have already realized this situation, so they have evolved from the no fixed place wild pirates to the current model. Not only the pursuit of personal strength, but also the expansion of power and regulation of power. Like Charlotte Linlin's nationalization of pirates, entrusting their children and cadres as ministers, governing each island in batches, honing their abilities, and training the army as a kind of preparation and response. And Kaido's formation of pirates, formation of a brand new legion of capable people, and so on, is it not an attempt to fight against Marine, the overlord of the sea? Perhaps Sengoku never imagined that he recruited Doflamingo himself. He originally wanted to sweep Doflamingo's face or something. As a result, this guy suddenly gained a lot of experience from this trip. Maybe he will use all of these experiences to the other party in their Marine in the future. No wonder I told that guy Dorag at the beginning that pirates might be the outlet of the new era. That guy looked at me with a very strange look. Now that I think about it, he must have thought I was shallow. Doflamingo laughed softly at himself. Dorag, who left Marine, must have understood Marine's background and terror better than Doflamingo. So Drago should have been very clear at the time. Theoretically speaking, it should never be possible for pirates to completely defeat Marine. So, later on, Drago chose to pull up a new batch of troops to develop in the form of an army? While Doflamingo was thinking about these messy things, Sengoku also passed on his order in an orderly manner. Completely close the surrounding sea area, and do not allow any ships to approach. At the same time, each ship has a colonel, forming a 10-man colonel team, leading 1,000 sailors, conducting refuge screening at the port, and transferring civilians to the refuge ship. Sengoku ordered. Seeing that Sengoku finished the previous work, Doflamingo took the opportunity to ask, "What else is there to screen? Bullet has only one person, and this is not something that everyone knows. Transfer the rest of the people to the refuge ship as soon as possible. Wouldn't it be better for us to start Buster Call?" Sengoku glanced back at Doflamingo, and said softly, "Buster Call, the meaning is to wipe out all the evils in a certain area, understand?" Doflamingo froze for a moment, then said with a smile, "So that's the case, it really makes the best use of everything. It is true that this Buster Call is aimed at Bullet, but Bullet is by no means the only villain on the Circumference Island. This fellow Sengoku is going to take advantage of the trend to wipe out all the evils on the entire Circumference Island." Without talking to Doflamingo, Sengoku calmly looked at the port terminal, and he has already made a move. Is Bullet waiting quietly for the Marine to evacuate all irrelevant personnel? Or is it going to explode? While Sengoku was thinking about how Douglas Bullet would respond to Marine, Bullet's figure appeared on the cliff facing the port. Marine's lookout immediately locked on to his figure and reported it. Soon, Sengoku also found Bullet. Facing Marine's actions of evacuating civilians, Bullet was unmoved. He sat leisurely on the relatively flat stone, and took out a water bottle and a few compressed biscuits again. It's hard to imagine that a lunatic worthy of Marine's Buster Call to suppress. His daily diet is actually as simple as ultimate. He sat on the rock, watched Marine's actions with a very calm expression, and then ate compressed biscuits to supplement the energy his body needed. Fur. Doflamingo looked at this scene and said with a smile, "It seems that we all misunderstood. The Circumference Island was chosen by Bullet himself. Field. Whether it is a cemetery or not is not up to him." Sengoku snorted coldly and said, "Perhaps it is not a secret to you. In the deep sea prison, Empelton, there is a lair specially reserved for bastards like you." "Oh." Doflamingo frowned and said, "Is it the legendary Eternal Hell? Is Haki imprisoned there?" But clearly, Sengoku didn't want to answer Doflamingo's question. Regarding the sixth layer of Empelton, the legendary Eternal Hell, the meaning of its existence has always been relatively controversial. Many upper echelons of the world's government and some generals of the Marine feel that it is useless to keep this place. Why should those who commit the most heinous crimes be imprisoned in such a place until they die in it? Instead of this, it's better to kill them directly, so that there will be some expenses left. After all, you have been raising them. Even if they are prisoners, it is still an important cost. But even so, Eternal Hell has not been cancelled. People like Haki, who have committed the most heinous crimes, will not be executed directly if it is not necessary, but will be imprisoned in it. The world government doesn't have any special explanations for those who know the existence of Eternal Hell, as if they are going their own way. But some people, he has some guesses about it. First of all, maybe the prisoners in Eternal Hell are all very valuable prisoners, like Haki, who have been powerful in the sea for a while. Such pirates are not afraid of death. At this level, how can there be pirates who are afraid of death? Pirates who are afraid of death cannot reach the position of overlord. But they may be afraid of being forgotten, of the loneliness that will never end until the end of their lives. This is the meaning of Eternal Hell. Perhaps during this long wait, what useful and valuable news will they reveal in order to take the initiative to die? It is not that the world government has not benefited from it before. This is part of the value of Eternal Hell's existence. There are also some speculations that most of the prisoners imprisoned in the Eternal Hell basically possess very ferocious fruit abilities, such as Crocodile's sand fruit, Shiki's lion fruit and so on. If these people are directly killed, then his fruit ability will quickly reincarnate to a certain corner of the world. At that time, if he cannot be controlled and the fruit ability is obtained by someone, then the probability of an imitation crime will be very high. You know that the last person who got the lion fruit became the pirate overlord of the New World and once dominated the world, so now that you are a lion fruit capable person, would you still be content with being ordinary? Those with a bit of conscience might become messengers of justice, but in this troubled world, the vast majority of people will become the ancestors of the sea. Therefore, in order to avoid this situation and minimize this probability, the eternal hell of Pelton came into being. Detain these well-known big pirates, and use time and history to obliterate their existence, so that the new generation of people will have no information channels to obtain traces of the existence of these villains. Over time, people on the sea will naturally not remember them. In the end, maybe the world government is also looking forward to one day, some people here, because of the long-term loneliness and being forgotten, can't bear it in the end, and choose to succumb to the world government, right? Although this probability can be said to be almost non-existent. Douglas Bullet, whose devil fruit ability is Paramecia combined fruit. This fruit ability is very convenient. Bullet can even use this ability to make messy tools such as submarines and battleships. At the same time, when his ability is at its peak, he can even assimilate the materials on the entire island with himself, creating a giant monster like Godzilla and Gundam. It's easy to destroy the island with one blow. In addition, Douglas Bullet has undergone several massacres, and his personal strength is here. There are very few people in the sea who do not know his reputation. Once such a person is killed now, if his fruit power falls into the hands of some evil party, the next wave of harm is almost foreseeable. That's why Sengoku Admiral said, "Is it a cemetery?" It's not his decision. Perhaps before departure, Sengoku Admiral had already decided that after defeating Douglas Bullet this time, he would be imprisoned in the eternal hell, and then proceed to erase the traces of his existence on the sea. On another huge warship, Vice Admiral Sakazuki, at this time, a large number of people in the port were quickly screened and then poured into the refuge ship. He really felt that it would be troublesome to do this. No one knew what Douglas Bullet's plan was. He didn't act at this moment. Maybe there was some conspiracy against Marine that was unfolding. If he had led the team himself, he would never have set aside such a long time to prepare for that damned bastard. As soon as he arrives at the Circumference Island, he, Sakazuki, will activate Buster Call directly. Absolute justice will never allow the slightest weakness. Unfortunately, this time the team is led by Sengoku Admiral. And Sakazuki is paranoid and cruel, but he doesn't blow up the refuge ship when it's not necessary. The reason is very simple. Ohara is because he is worried that some scholars will hide in, and the success will fall short. Now, Douglas Bullet is the only target on the Circumference Island, and he has appeared on the cliff again, and he is under observation. In this situation, he, Sakazuki, burned the refuge ship and has no proper reason to go back. Just looking at the crowded port, Sakazuki feels the passage of time and feels a little annoyed. Under the rapid investigation of a team of thousands of people, the people on the port were also quickly arranged on the refuge ship. After waiting for more than half an hour, Doflamingo stood up impatiently, walked to the edge of the deck, and looked down. The population of Yenjo Island is quite large, roughly estimated to be at least 50,000 to 60,000 people. It's really troublesome. Doflamingo casually asked a Marine major beside him, "How long will this situation last?" Major Marine was stunned for a moment, and then said, "According to the previous forecast, it will take about 4 hours to complete the evacuation of the civilians on the entire Circumference Island." Before Marine arrived on Joyuen Island, he had already made relevant plans, including investigating the population intelligence of the people on Yenjo Island, formulating an evacuation plan, and estimated time. After listening to Doflamingo for 4 hours, and now only half an hour has passed, I feel even more bored. A scarlet color flashed in his eyes, and the energy on his body fluctuated. Sengoku, who was originally standing on the other side, suddenly turned his head to look at Doflamingo, and he saw at a glance that Doflamingo's fingertips seemed to be clotted with drops of blood. "Hey, Doflamingo, what do you want?" Sengoku asked angrily. Fur. It takes too much time to evacuate one by one. This is a war. When did Buster Call become so indecisive? As a righteous Marine, you may not be able to make a decision that violates your duties. Then let me help you, Sengoku. Doflamingo smiled evilly at Sengoku, and then said, "I am a pirate. I do not have any psychological burden or pressure. 2 minutes, at most 2 minutes, this port can be completely emptied." As soon as the words fell, under Sengoku's frightened gaze, Doflamingo catapulted a drop of blood from his fingertips towards the densely packed crowd at the port. "Bastard!" Sengoku said furiously. His whole body was shaken, a wave of air was set off, and he pressed towards Doflamingo. He fought against Doflamingo, and he also saw with his own eyes how Doflamingo slaughtered the entire Cervantes Island. Therefore, he knew that even though it was just a drop of blood, Once that drop of blood, like a bullet, shot and killed anyone in this port, Doflamingo could transform this drop of blood into a torrent of blood within minutes. After that, no one will be alive in this port. Frozen time capsule. At the critical moment, Kuzan, who was standing on the pier before disembarking, discovered the mutation and acted immediately. The drop of bright red blood that Doflamingo ejected from the warship was attacked by a touch of cold air, and in a blink of an eye, it turned into a red ice bead and fell into Kuzan's hand. Kuzan looked up at the top of the warship, and Doflamingo was also straddling the fence with one foot at this time. Half of his body was just exposed outside the deck, and he looked at Kuzan. At this moment, Kuzan suddenly discovered that under Doflamingo's gentle and courteous appearance, like a well-trained nobleman, there is an evil and cruel darkness hidden. Fufurofurfur. Has it been stopped? What a pity. Doflamingo smiled evilly, glanced at the vigilant Kuzan, and turned away from the deck as if he had received some spiritual pleasure and satisfaction. It's still long, I'm going to sleep for a while. Doflamingo walked past Sengoku and muttered. At this moment, Sengoku realized that maybe the bastard Doflamingo just wanted to have some fun before going to bed. It's all about making them marine. This bastard is really wicked. At this time, Sengoku had regretted recruiting Doflamingo, the damn 7 warlords of the sea, in this operation for countless times. It was getting late, but Bullet still didn't move, just sat on the rock, looking at the sea level. At the same time, the crowd on the port has become sparse. Sengoku was slightly relieved when the last civilian was taken aboard the refuge ship. Hey, that's not fair. A few bastards cursed at the port. That's right, we are also the commoners of Yenjo Island. Why don't you let us aboard? Damn Marine, isn't your job to protect us? Get out of the way, I want to get on the refuge ship too. Not just these few gangsters, in fact, hundreds of people in the entire Joyuan Island were stopped and they were not allowed to board the refuge boat. It's just that those people are now hiding in dark corners, watching these gangsters. Just as this group of gangsters were bluffing, Marine who was blocking them quickly dispersed from behind. Seeing this appearance, these people shouted even more arrogantly. That's right, why don't you just let us go there earlier? Wasting everyone's time here. Next time, open your eyes for lousy. Just when these gangsters were about to go in, a tall and strong Marine general wearing a vice admiral cloak and wearing a dark red suit walked over. Sakazuki Vice Admiral. A Marine colonel quickly saluted, and then said, these failed to pass the review. According to our intelligence investigation on the Circle Island and the identification of the surrounding people before. No need to say more. Sakazuki raised his hand calmly, and then said, is it within the scope of Buster Call? Yes. The colonel swallowed and responded immediately. At this moment, although the leading gangster was a little afraid of Sakazuki's strong physique, under the watchful eyes of these younger brothers, he mustered up his courage and pulled him like a 2,580,000 man. He walked up to Sakazuki with a more aggressive pace than before. Doflamingo pushed Sakazuki's stomach and said, what the hell is your name, Sakazuki? There is some truth in saying that good people are bullied by others. Precisely because Marine represents justice, so occasionally I really meet that kind of person who wants to die. Marines who feel righteous do whatever they want to civilians, and dare not do anything, so as to provoke Marines and gain prestige. These bastards, when facing Marine, dare to strike hard, but if they meet pirates, even the weakest group of pirates, they will be trembling like quails. Sakazuki is not a good-tempered person, he was pushed in the stomach by the bastard, and his burly figure did not move at all. Glancing down, Sakazuki grabbed the man's head with his palm and didn't intend to start a conversation with these bastards. Ah. It hurts, bastard. The gangster whose head was being grabbed yelled angrily. But in the next moment, violent and hot magma spewed out from Sakazuki's palm, and with a bang, the gangster who was still yelling and cursing just now was ignited. No, it was not only ignited, it should be said that it had already been burned. The clothes all over his body were burned to dregs and ashes at the same time as the flesh and blood in an instant, and there was a pair of incomplete charred bones, sticking to the hot magma, and Sakazuki pinched the skull and held it in his hands. Then, under the shocking and terrified gazes of the gangsters, Sakazuki squeezed his hands suddenly, crushing the man's skull into pieces and throwing it on the ground. HMPH. Sakazuki snorted coldly and walked over the burnt corpse. The gangsters who were still shouting looked at the vicious Sakazuki, shouted in horror, and quickly fled here, and got into the deserted town. Sakazuki didn't even look at them, and walked a few steps into the empty port square, standing with his arms crossed, waiting for something. At the same time, on the warship, Sengoku Admiral, who was the commander of Buster Call, was still looking at the barren mountain in the center of the island in the distance, and at the edge of the cliff, sitting motionless Douglas Bullet. Admiral, the refuge ship has left. a Marine colonel quickly ran behind Sengoku Admiral to report. Sengoku Admiral nodded silently, and then took out a golden phone bug from his bosom. Under the somewhat nervous gaze of the colonel behind him, Sengoku Admiral pressed down the golden phone bug decisively. In the next second, piercing screams sounded from the golden phone bug. At the same time, Sakazuki, Kuzan, Paluzolino, Garp, and Gion all sounded the buster call signal. Garp stood under the mast of his dog-headed warship, and said in a deep voice, "Fire." The moment his voice fell, not only the dog-headed warship, but also the 10 warships surrounding the entire Joyuen Island, launched the first round of shelling in unison. In front of Sakazuki, it was empty, but the sky above the once bustling town could still be vaguely seen, almost covered by dense ammunition in the blink of an eye. Immediately afterwards, ammunition fell into the town, violent explosions and roars continued, solid houses and churches were destroyed, flames began to spread and swallow everything around, and the impact of gunpowder smoke and explosions tore the earth apart. Buster call. Start immediately. Starting today, there will be no more circumference islands in the sea. The bombardment of the warship gradually covered the island one after another, first the shore and the harbor, then the towns near the sea, and then continued the bombardment inward, and finally, the artillery fire reached the barren hill in the center of the Great Circle Island. The dense shells finally covered the cliff and covered Douglas Bullett's figure. Then, a violent explosion erupted from where Douglas Bullet was. Gunpowder smoke filled the air, and the sea breeze blew past, forming black circles and spreading. At this moment, a figure jumped out of the black smoke. There is no doubt that the figure is Douglas Bullet. At the moment when the bullet moved, Sakazuki, who seemed to have been waiting for a long time, couldn't hold back anymore. Magma sparks exploded under his feet, and that sturdy figure, like a block of magma ejected from a crater, took off on the spot. Almost in the blink of an eye, Sakazuki's tall figure merged with Bullet's burly body in midair. Dark Hound. Sakazuki didn't even say hello, and with the magma wrapped in his arms, he blasted towards Bullet's head. Huh. Bullet didn't change his face, his thick arm was covered by the rich armament Haki in an instant, and he punched Sakazuki's Dark Hound with a worthy punch. With a bang, the magma and Haki exploded in the air, and the violent airflow instantly wiped out the black smoke around it. At this moment, a golden light burst out from the warship. Bullet's punch landed on Sakazuki's Dark Hound, but he looked to the side at a very fast speed from the corner of his eye. Sure enough, when the golden light reached Bullet's side, Paluzolino's figure condensed out of the light particles, kicked Bullet's head from top to bottom with an upside-down golden hook posture. Bullet's other arm jerked up and caught Paluzolino's kick with a thud. But at this moment, he couldn't use his strength in the air anymore. Even if he blocked Paluzolino's kick, the force brought him directly to smash down. Zero ice hockey. Kuzan at this moment, as if he had rehearsed countless times, he shot at the most precise timing. Bullet frowned tightly, trying to adjust his state, but he didn't have time at all. Almost in the blink of an eye, a gust of freezing air swept over his body, and then, his whole body turned into ice. One knife-style pedal eagle. A soft shout came, and a pink figure flashed past the ice cube melted by Douglas Bullet with a fierce slash. It's Gion. Immediately afterwards, Douglas Bullet's ice cube shattered, his blood burst from his chest, and a knife wound with a depth of bones stretched from his left shoulder to his right abdomen. Sure enough, even though Douglas Bullet was very strong, Marine was good at combining attacks. With the cooperation of Sakazuki and other 4 strong players, Bullet was slashed at the very beginning. But Bullet didn't cry out in pain, as if the knife hadn't hit him at all, and he didn't even feel the pain. The mighty armament Haki had completely covered his upper body, turning him into a macho man in black armor. Both feet fell to the ground, shattering the ground. Bullet stretched out his arms, as if he was about to make a move. But it was also at this moment that the same strong body appeared above him. It's Garp. Garp's fist was also condensed with extremely rich Haki, and he punched Bullet down. Bone impact. Garp yelled. The ferocious Haki power enveloped Bullet in the surrounding space of more than 100 meters almost in an instant. This is not Garp's limit. Under normal circumstances, Garp's blow can completely cover towns and even islands. But it was unnecessary at this time, so he reduced the attack range and increased the strength of the attack. Black lightning burst out from it, and even though Bullet had already covered Haki on his body, he still felt great pressure. In the next instant, with him as the center, the ground within 100 meters suddenly sank, and a deep hole was blasted out of the air by Garp's punch. In the cabin of the warship, Doflamingo watched the scene with a coffee cup in his hand and a smile on his lips. This set of combos seems simple, but in fact it is very terrifying. It is precisely because each step is simplified to the ultimate. It seems that everyone is just shooting at random. and this randomness, falling on anyone, I am afraid it is quite heavy. At this moment, Doflamingo brought himself into Bullet's situation at this time, deduced it from the beginning, and then had to admit that if it were him, he would probably be bombed into the ground at this moment as well. There is no imaginary balance of power, no suspense. Almost from the very beginning, Marine beat Bullet, the disparity in strength was too great. This is not a one-on-one fight, but a group fight, with Garp as the leader, Sakazuki and other 3 future admirals as assistants, and a future admiral alternate. With this lineup, it seems extravagant to fight anyone in groups. If it were Whitebeard, it would be very dangerous. What's more, this target is just a Bullet. So from the very beginning, when Bullet was punched into the ground by Garp, he was almost unable to seize any initiative. Freezing, flashing, magma, slashing, iron fist, good guy, all of them were alive. Under the continuous offensive, Bullet was completely suppressed. Holding a coffee cup, Doflamingo walked up the deck from the cabin, and came to Sengoku Admiral very naturally. Sengoku Admiral glanced at Doflamingo and said nothing. Doflamingo took a sip of his coffee and asked, "So, what shall I do?" "Just wait here, you don't have to do anything," Sengoku Admiral said calmly. Doflamingo shrugged and said, "Sure enough, from the very beginning, I didn't need to be recruited at all, so what's the point of including me in this operation this time?" Sengoku didn't answer anything, and Doflamingo smiled to himself and said, "Observance test." "What is an obedience test?" "Turning a deer into a horse is the most straightforward obedience test. Observe the other party's performance by throwing out an abnormal thing or speech, so as to judge the other party's position and choice." This Buster call, the action against Douglas Bullet, actually didn't need to call his subordinate Shichibukai for help at all. But Marine and the world government still did so. In fact, the main purpose is to check whether Doflamingo is willing to cooperate. Doflamingo is not surprised by this, he has already done what needs to be retaliated and what needs to be fought back, and the rest can be written down in a small notebook first. I will find opportunities to vent my anger later. If you don't plan for a moment, why do you have a certain life? If you can't even bear this anger, how can you make a big deal out of it? So you're just here to watch? After a while, Doflamingo suddenly asked, looking at Douglas Bullet who had been beaten and vomited blood. Sengoku Admiral said calmly, "The situation is obvious, and the advantage is in the hands of our Marines. Since this is the case, as the General Admiral, I should sit at the rear instead of fighting for success." Seeing Sengoku's composure, Doflamingo took a sip of coffee calmly. In his impression, Bullet was indeed defeated in this Buster call. But Doflamingo always feels. The Buster call he lost, and this time's specifications, should be completely 2 grades, right? At the same time, for some reason, Doflamingo has observed the battle so far and found that Douglas Bullet has not used his ability once. Relying entirely on Haki and physical skills, they're holding on and fighting fiercely with Garp and other 5 people. Why is that? In fact, not only Doflamingo was puzzled, but Sengoku was also the same. That guy Bullet had already fallen into an absolute disadvantage. This was not due to the performance. But even so, Bullet still has no ability to use it. Why is that? Sengoku doesn't know it, but Garp who is fighting Bullet can feel it. There's no faith in this guy's fist, drink. Gion yelled softly, and at this moment, the left half of Bullet's body happened to be frozen by Kuzan, and the momentary stiffness exposed Bullet's flaws again. Because of this, Gion rushed over decisively, and stabbed the famous sword in his hand, Jinpira, into Bullet's chest. This knife pierced Bullet's chest and back in an instant. Just when Bullet was about to hit Gion with his other arm, Sakazuki slammed Bullet's wrist, and the hot magma erupted, as if he wanted to burn Bullet, but for a while, it was difficult to break through Bullet's Haki power. Just like that, Bullet's left half was frozen, a knife was stuck in the middle of his chest, his right arm was locked by Sakazuki, and the whole person was wide open. And Garp's figure, also at this moment, shrouded in front of Bullet. It's really sad. I lost my belief in purpose, so I am raging in this sea for fun by bullying the weak? Garp stared at Bullet calmly, and said softly. Bullet, who was still struggling, seemed to be stunned for a moment after hearing this, and his body movements also stopped. But he stopped, but Garp had no intention of stopping. It's over. Garp murmured softly, and then he squeezed his fist suddenly, and blasted a heavy blow to Bullet's heart. Fist bones explode. This blow hit Bullet's heart, visible to the naked eye. The Haki power on Bullet's chest was instantly crushed and dissipated, and then the sound of solid muscles collapsing inward and bones breaking came to everyone's ears. The pain of being squeezed in the heart made Bullet suddenly break out of the dazed state, and he instinctively wanted to concentrate his strength to resist Garp's punch. But when I saw Garp's eyes that carried out his belief, I suddenly felt that everything was boring. There's no place for me in this sea. A thought flashed through Bullet's mind. Then, a mouthful of dirty blood spewed out of his mouth, and the frozen area on his body was also shattered by Garp's punch. His knees softened and he knelt on the ground immediately. Guillaume. Kuzan snorted. Guillaume's speed was really fast enough, moving like a rabbit, and dodged behind Bullet. The thick seastone shackles wrapped around Bullet's arms at an extremely fast speed, and locked behind Bullet with a click. Don't kill me. Bullet didn't struggle after being locked, but looked up at Garp and asked softly. Garp looked into Bullet's eyes, and said after a moment of silence, before you die, go and taste the endless loneliness in being forgotten. This is the atonement for those innocent people who died at your hands. Hearing this, Bullet became a little annoyed, his muscles tensed up, as if he was about to break free from the seastone shackles and run away. But Guillaume slammed on his shoulder from behind him and said, at this point, do you still want to struggle? It's useless, your destination is Impelton. Destination? Bullet stopped struggling after hearing these words. 10 minutes later, Garp and his team escorted Bullet to Sengoku's warship. Sengoku looked at Douglas Bullet with complicated eyes, something is wrong. Although Sengoku also thinks that this battle will not last for too long, after all, Marine has given away all the wealth he can fight. With this lineup, Bullet can still fight 50 to 50 or something. Then they don't need Marine's face. However, this situation is still much easier than Sengoku expected. How long before and after? Within 2 hours, Bullet was arrested. What about the ability to combine fruits? Isn't Bullet the owner of conquerors? Why haven't I seen them all? While being escorted to the prison inside the warship, Bullet also met Doflamingo on the deck. There was no interaction between the two sides, and Bullet didn't even have to look at Doflamingo. But just when the two sides passed each other, Doflamingo suddenly said, if you want to surpass Roger, you are still too far away, Bullet. Huh. Bullet stopped abruptly. The Marine officers who were escorting him gave him 2 shoves, but Bullet stood motionless, head tilted, staring at Doflamingo. And Doflamingo also had a smile on his face at this time. Impelton is a good place, quiet and pleasant, go there and think about it, what should we do? To surpass a dead man. Who are you? Bullet asked suddenly, looking at Doflamingo. Doflamingo froze for a moment, then smiled brighter, and said to Bullet, Doflamingo. My name is Donquixote Doflamingo, remember my name well. Maybe one day in the future, we will meet again, Bullet. At this moment, Sengoku also came over. He was not worried about Doflamingo, for fear that this guy would do something wrong, so he interrupted the communication between the two of them. I didn't expect you to have some self-knowledge. Indeed, sooner or later, a guy like you will definitely be imprisoned in Impelton. Furfurfur, that is really a future that I am looking forward to, Doflamingo said with a smile. Bullet didn't pause any longer. Following the strength of several Marine officers, he took another step and left here. Although the culprit Bullet has been arrested and brought to justice, the artillery fire and roar of the Marine fleet did not stop because of this. The cruelty of Buster Call is to burn everything within sight to ashes. JoJo Island must be completely destroyed. Doflamingo stood by the fence of the deck, looked at the blazing Joyuen Island, and suddenly said, is it over? If there is nothing else, I will leave. Bullet was arrested, and the Buster Call may not be over, but the follow-up has no troubles. Like a passerby, being involved in such an incident more or less made Doflamingo feel a little boring, and it was almost time to end this farce. According to the procedure, you should follow us back to the G1 base, Sengoku said. But before he finished speaking, he saw a pair of bat wings suddenly spread out from behind Doflamingo. With a light flap of the bat wings, Doflamingo flew into the air. That's the end of the boring tricks, Sengoku. This is the last time I tolerate your Marine's rudeness. Doflamingo in the air looked back at Sengoku, with a cruel smile on his face and said, next time, I will definitely make you regret it. Hearing this, Sengoku's expression darkened immediately. Doflamingo guy, is he threatening him? Threatening him a dignified Marine admiral? But Doflamingo obviously didn't care about his face. The bat wings behind him fluttered, and the figure flew away at a very fast speed. Beehive Island is a famous pirate paradise in New World. Many years ago, this place was the residence of the Rocks pirates. Later, the Rocks pirate closed down, and the big pirate Oaku occupied this place, so this place became Ochaku's domain. However, because of the special nature of the Hive Island itself, there are many pirates coming and going, even Oaku. It is impossible to create some dictatorial mobs on this island. Therefore, Hive Island is an open and inclusive pirate island. The information that Bullet was last seen before was on Beehive Island. He left here and went to Joyuen Island, so it can be seen that the distance between Hummingbird and Zhujo Island is not very far. At this time Doflamingo is on this island. After leaving from Sengoku, Doflamingo didn't know why he felt a little irritable, so he didn't return to dress Rosa immediately to take a walk around here. With twists and turns, Doflamingo came to the ghostly place of Beehive Island. It happened to be night when he came, but the entire Hive Island was brightly lit, and it was extremely lively. From afar in the air, Doflamingo could hear the vulgar language of the pirates, their joyful laughter, the roar of fighting, and the occasional gunshots. Obviously, pirate paradise is naturally very free and chaotic. And similar to the Von Teese back then, there seems to be only one rule on this Beehive Island, that is, you can't attack Ochaku's subordinates. Anyone who dares to attack Ochaku's people will be regarded as a declaration of war on Ochaku. Taking advantage of the night, Doflamingo landed at the corner of the street, and when he came out, he naturally blended into this lively neighborhood. Pirates in 2s and 3s hooked their shoulders, drank wine, bragged, and dangled in the street. If you meet people who don't like each other, you may draw your sword and face each other. Their attacks are very fierce, often a white knife goes in and a red knife comes out, and a life is reimbursed. But even if there is a death, the vendors around and the rest of the people on the street will not feel panic, on the contrary, they all look like they are watching the excitement and don't think it's a big deal. In about 10 minutes or so, a team from Hive Island will come over and drag the corpse away, and then there will be no more. For some reason, looking at such a bloody and chaotic island, Doflamingo's restless mood seems to be gradually dissipating. It was as if his hungry and thirsty soul, which was born evil, had been relieved a little bit. Crossing the street, he pushed open the door of a lively tavern, and Doflamingo walked in naturally. No one here pays attention to who will come in. It seems that some fierce competition is being held inside. A large group of people gather around a table, shouting excitedly. 550,000 berries. 550,000 berries on. A strong man held a revolver in his hand, stuffed a bullet into the revolver, and then said, "See clearly, among the 5 bullet chambers, this bullet is the only one, right?" As he said that, he also showed his revolver to everyone in Jobian. The rest of the people also agreed with his statement, and then the man put the reel into the gun body, turned it suddenly, and the bullet chamber with the bullets turned over quickly. One shot of 550,000 Baileys, who will come? The strong man raised his revolver and shouted excitedly. "I'm coming." A hunk with a scarred face didn't know whether he had drunk too much, or he just liked such exciting games. He immediately reached out and took the revolver, pointed it at his head, and pulled the trigger. Click, empty ring. The expression on the scarred face became extremely excited, and he shouted, "Ha ha 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 ha, pay the money, pay the money." The strong man didn't take his word for it. He pulled out 550,000 Baileys from the pile of money thrown by the spectators on the table, threw it to the scarred face and said, 550,000 Baileys have already passed the test. Next, 600,000 Baileys are shot. Is there anyone who wants to challenge? After finishing speaking, he also shouted at the surrounding pirates, hurry up, the prize pool is about to run out of money, cowards hurry up and throw the reward money here." Some pirates who didn't plan to try it and just wanted to watch the excitement were not annoyed by being called cowards. Instead, they threw the Bailey in their hands on the table happily. Soon, a large pile of coins was accumulated. Doflamingo found it interesting. After a while, he also threw a wad of Baileys into it, and then wondered if his money was poisonous. As soon as he threw the money in, the challenger this time directly shot his brains out of the ground. When passing the level smoothly, everyone will cheer, but now that someone is dead, the pirates around are even more excited. Everyone yelled, and then rushed to help, transported the unlucky guy's body from the table, and threw it in an empty corner. When the chips increased to 900,000 Baileys, another one died. 1,000,000 Baileys arrived. 2 bullets, does anyone dare to come? The strong man added another bullet to the wheel, and now the probability became 2/5. However, he is still ruthless and dares to go up, and Doflamingo once again felt the madness of the pirates who drank too much. Soon, there was a bang, and the first challenger was killed on the spot. Okay. The strong man laughed loudly, and then shouted, 3,000,000 Baileys, 3 bullets, is anyone coming? Hey, the money on the table is not enough for 3,000,000. A pirate shouted. The strong man glanced down, as if it wasn't enough, he casually pressed the gold pendant hanging from his waist on the table, and said, hurry up, 3,000,000, come and collect them all. But at this time, Doflamingo felt a little bored, so he didn't participate in anything, turned around and walked to the bar, looked at the middle-aged uncle who was wiping the glasses inside and said, if you have any recommendations, let's have a drink. Oh. The uncle raised his head calmly, glanced at Doflamingo, and said in surprise, oh, I didn't expect a big man to come. As the person who opened the tavern on the Hive Island, he must be a character who sees all directions and listens to all directions. Uncle Ju recognized Doflamingo's identity at a glance. Not daring to neglect anything, soon, the uncle served Doflamingo with a glass of spirits. Do they play like this every day? Doflamingo asked, pointing to the group of crazy guys behind him. Almost. The bartender said with a smile. Who is organizing? Or is there any interest? Doflamingo asked casually. There is no organization, and there is no interest. It's just a vulgar game played by a group of idle pirates who don't care about their lives. The bartender shook his head. That's really. Doflamingo opened his mouth, wanting to describe it, but in the end he didn't know how to describe this group of guys. After shaking his head, Doflamingo took a sip of his wine, then smacked his lips and said, "It's really bad. To be honest, because of your status, this is already the best wine I can offer," the uncle bartender said helplessly. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo waved his hands with a smile, not caring about anything, but soon took another breath. He turned around, leaned against the bar, looked at the group of pirates who were playing games, and was a little lost in thought. At this moment, a figure suddenly smashed the door of the tavern and rolled in. The uncle bartender behind Doflamingo looked familiar. He didn't even bother to shout, and shook his head to himself, not intending to speak at all. Doflamingo was feeling a little funny when a figure came in from the shattered door of the tavern. He stepped on the figure lying on the ground, and walked in gracefully and calmly. When Doflamingo saw him, his eyes lit up and he said, "Hey, Mihawk." That's right, the one who walked in was none other than Mihawk carrying the black knife Yi. After he heard someone calling him, he was also a little surprised, followed the voice and found Doflamingo. Mihawk, who was originally indifferent, had a rare smile on his face. He strode up to Doflamingo and asked, "Dover, why are you here?" "Walking around. I happened to settle here today." Doflamingo responded with a smile, and then asked, "What about you? Why are you here?" Mihawk responded calmly. "The vice captain of the Arcstar pirates, the swordsman of the raging sea, Vicky Ristel, is right here. I'm looking for him." Doflamingo nodded instinctively first. "Mihawk, it's normal to run around chasing the figure of the sea swordsman. I vaguely remember that when this guy first entered New World, he picked up 5 Marine Vice Admirals in a row because there were more Marine Swordsman Vice Admirals. At that stage, he was called a Marine Hunter by Marine." But in the next moment, Doflamingo reacted and asked in surprise, "What pirates?" "Arcstar pirates. What's wrong?" Mihawk asked with a still calm expression. Doflamingo rubbed his chin and said, "If I remember correctly, the Arcstar pirates. The captain is Oaku, right?" "That's right. This is the base camp of the Arcstar pirates. Otherwise why would I come here to find that Vikrister?" Mihawk said with a natural look. Doflamingo looked Mihawk up and down, finally shook his head a little funny and said, "So, you are going to make a big fuss on Ochaku's site. Don't be so rude to me, I'll send the greeting card first." Mihawk frowned and retorted. "And what if he doesn't agree to fight you?" Doflamingo asked again. "Did I give you the invitation for nothing?" Mihawk said very haughty. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo laughed loudly when he heard this, and after a long time, he drank the drink in his hand and said, "It really looks like your style," with an unscrupulous posture. "Whether you are a swordsman or a pirate, you should have no scruples about these two identities," Mihawk said casually. Hearing this, Doflamingo froze there suddenly. He looked at the man who was as free as the wind, Mihawk, and the pirates who were pulling the trigger crazily and hiding with Shinigami. At this moment, Doflamingo seemed to understand why he was upset. Because of the compulsory recruitment of 7 warlords of the sea, he felt very unpleasant. It was a feeling of not being free. To be honest, Doflamingo never advertised himself as a free pirate. But he asked himself, and he was really annoyed and irritated by it. After a long time, Doflamingo said softly, "Hey, Mihawk, long lost. Let's join forces here and make a big fuss." Early in the morning, in the pirate hotel on Hive Island, Doflamingo was sleeping on the bed, and there seemed to be a ray of sunlight that just avoided the curtains and shone on his face. Doflamingo himself doesn't like the sun very much, and being shown on his face early in the morning made him even a little unhappy in his sleep. Suddenly turned over and got up from the bed, Doflamingo looked a little annoyed, and was about to call his maid to speak for a few words. "What's going on? Can't even do a shading." But after getting up and looking at the surrounding environment, Doflamingo seems to have just realized, this is not my home. There is no maid to follow? That's fine. What a shabby hotel. Doflamingo went to the window and pulled the short curtain, cursing a little angrily. He drank a lot last night. Because of his irritability, he purposely suppressed his physique and abilities. Otherwise, no matter how much he drank, it would be useless. So after some confusion later, I didn't choose a place, went out and found a pirate hotel and slept. If he is conscious, with Doflamingo's pickiness, he must find a more luxurious place to live. Wash up, get dressed, and then leave the room. Although he drank too much last night, Doflamingo did not really lose his memory. In his impression, Mihawk lived across the street. So after Doflamingo came out, he stood in the corridor and knocked on Mihawk's door. After knocking a few times, he found that there was no response inside. With Mihawk's strength, he couldn't be because he slept too deeply and couldn't hear someone knocking on the door, so it can be judged that Mihawk should not be here. Doflamingo didn't think much about it, and quickly turned and went downstairs to the lobby of the hotel. He knocked on the table at the bar, making the boss inside look over, and then asked, "Where is the guest who came with me last night?" The boss looked at Doflamingo a little nervously. Obviously, he had recognized Doflamingo long ago, as did Mihawk who came with Doflamingo last night. After swallowing his saliva, the boss said, "Master Doflamingo, Mr. Mihawk went out early this morning. He said he was going to send a greeting card to someone. Let me tell you when you wake up. He said he will be back soon." As soon as Doflamingo heard this, he understood. He didn't ask any more questions, and asked, "Is there anything to eat?" Yes. The boss hurriedly said, "I asked my wife to prepare the meal early in the morning, just because I was afraid that it might not suit your taste. 2 bosses came to the store, and I was afraid that the 2 bosses would not be served well, so the owner of the shop made all the preparations, from food and beverages to drinks. He arranged everything overnight." Doflamingo took out 2 Kimberleys from the pocket in the lining of his suit, threw them on the table and said, "I don't care about food, I'm a little hungry, send them here." The boss quickly put away Kimberly, and he was in a very happy mood. This boss is generous. Different from ordinary coins, coins are small consumption, often used to buy a newspaper or something, but with coins and its similar Kimberly, that is not of the same nature. Kimberly is made of serious gold, it can be said to be a gold coin. Judging from the current currency market, 1 gold Bailey is equivalent to more than 100,000 Baileys. Together with 2 ordinary guest rooms, plus breakfast, you can get 2 Kimberleys, which is a bloody profit. For a while, it seems that Doflamingo is not so scary anymore. In the lobby of the hotel, there are some tables and chairs, but normally they are for the guests to sit and rest, drink tea, and read newspapers. At this time, Doflamingo directly used this place as a restaurant, found a place to sit out of the light, and greeted, "Do you have today's newspaper?" Yes, I'll get it for you." The hotel owner took out a copy of the latest newspaper that just arrived this morning from the books and periodicals in his store, and quickly delivered it to Doflamingo. Doflamingo just sat here and read the newspaper, and the food was served quickly. This should be the last time Douglas Bullet was published in the newspapers before he escaped from prison. If it wasn't for saving some face from Irene, I'm afraid he should be banned from all news now. Doflamingo looked at the newspaper and whispered softly. "That's right. This newspaper mainly talks about the Buster Call incident on Circumference Island, and there is also a description about him Doflamingo, which is not specific, that is, 7 warlords of the sea heavenly yaksha Donquixote Doflamingo assisted Marine, participated in the Buster Call, and brought Douglas Bullet, the successor of the Ghost, to justice. Added a photo of Doflamingo standing with Sengoku. Emphasized that 7 warlords of the sea and marine are working together, and both belong to the battle sequence under the banner of the world government. The 2 parties cooperate happily and share the same mind. As Doflamingo said, this newspaper, it is estimated that in a short period of time, Bullet will appear in public opinion for the last time. Everything about him in the future should be quickly deleted by the world government, as if he had never appeared before. 20 or 30 years have passed by like this, and there are probably not many people in the sea who can remember about Bullet. After reading the Buster Call incident about Circumference Island, Doflamingo turned 2 pages back, and then his eyes lit up. Furofurofufer, the unique skill is high, it's going to be done. Doflamingo watched this report with a smile. Gecko Moria claims to conquer Wano Kuni and ravage Kaido. Gecko Moria's current bounty is 300 million Baileys, which has completely surpassed Donquixote Doflamingo before becoming 7 warlords of the sea. As we all know, Moria and Doflamingo belong to the same batch of pirates. Doflamingo had successfully defeated the Big Mom pirates in New World before, while Moria chose the Beast's pirates, with Doflamingo's jewels in front. I don't know Moria, will he succeed in defeating Kaido? Follow-up newspapers also conducted a large number of evaluations and analyzed Moria. Not to mention, there are really many people who think that Moria is likely to ravage Kaido. As for the reason, it is very strange to say that since Doflamingo can beat Charlotte Linlin, Moria can beat Kaido, which sounds unbelievable, now seems to be possible. Doflamingo doesn't know what brain circuit supports their ideas. He doesn't like Moria, but he appreciates Moria's courage to go to Wano Kuni to challenge Kaido. I hope this guy doesn't go back to the old way, being massacred by Kaido and turning himself into a waste house. Although, this is very likely to be a high probability event. After smiling, Doflamingo looked at the follow-up report. The former king of the Sourb Kingdom, who fell into a pirate. That's right, it's Bartholomew. This guy was resigned by the world government, and I don't know what is going on with him and Drago now. In short, Bartholomew Kuma seems to be active as a pirate at present. Looking at the newspaper, Doflamingo quickly thought of the redhead Shanks. When I was in Logue Town, I saw him in buggy, but so far, Shanks hasn't heard anything from the sea. This made Doflamingo a little bit puzzled. A guy like him, in 2 years, should he be able to make a name for himself? In fact, this is really Doflamingo's misremembering. In the original story, Shanks and Buggy acted separately after the execution in Logue Town. But Shanks was about 2 years later. Haki escaped from Imperton, and this guy just supported a small sampan and found his first partner Usopp in East Blue. In other words, during the previous time, Shanks may have maintained his pirate status, but nothing happened. Master Doflamingo, the dishes are all served. The shop owner greeted softly. Doflamingo quickly flipped through a few pages of the newspaper, and there were some unimportant news in the back, and there was nothing to read. Then he threw the newspaper to the store owner and said, "Got it." The food is not particularly rich, but for breakfast, Doflamingo doesn't plan to eat anything luxurious, just fill your stomach. I took a sip of milk and ate sliced meat with bread, not to mention, the taste was okay. While Doflamingo was having breakfast, a figure walked in outside the hotel door. That's right. Miho Bunch came in with a black knife and knight on his back. After seeing Doflamingo, he was a little surprised, and said softly, "Are you awake? I remember that you slept until noon." During the few days when he left Logue Town and arrived at the first half of the Grand Line, Mihawk was with Doflamingo, so he naturally knew some of Doflamingo's situation. Doflamingo rolled his eyes and said, "Don't make me sound like a slacker, it's because I go to bed late at night, after all. Theoretically, it's a night." After a pause, Doflamingo said, "I just prepared 2 servings, do you want some?" "Alright." Mihawk replied calmly, then took off the black knife behind him, put it against the wall beside him, and sat down opposite Doflamingo, and ate with Doflamingo. After taking another sip of milk, Doflamingo asked, "How is it? Has that guy picked up your station?" "I don't know. I just handed over the greeting card to the janitor of the Arcstar Pirates, and told him to hand it over to Vicky Stare." Mihawk shook his head calmly and said, "What time did you make an appointment with him?" Doflamingo asked again. "When the sun sets," Mihawk said very artistically. That is, when the sun goes down, Mihawk will knock on the door. As for whether Wilkrister saw the invitation and agreed to a showdown with Mihawk, that's none of his business. Doflamingo looked at the confident Mihawk, and was thinking about the situation in his heart. According to the original development, Mihawk should have come too, so he must have clashed with Ochaku's Arcstar pirates, but Zhengzi was indeed not killed. Could it be that Mihawk lost and escaped from Hive Island? But Doflamingo felt that this should not be the case. Mihawk should have won all battles on his way to the top of the kendo. After pondering for a while, he felt that he couldn't find the answer, so Doflamingo stopped thinking. Anyway, we can know the answer tonight. He has already decided that if it is a simple and normal duel, then that is fine, but as long as Mihawk and the others have a conflict here, he, Doflamingo, will have a big fight on Beehive Island. The daytime on Hive Island was still frantic, and Doflamingo sat in the lobby of the hotel enjoying the cold and drinking tea, waiting for the moment of Mihawk's duel. During this period, Doflamingo witnessed 5 fights in front of the hotel alone. 2 of them killed people, and the remaining 3 were basically beaten to death. The weather was too hot, and Doflamingo didn't go out at noon, so he had a meal with Mihawk here, and it was considered over. When the sun began to sink slowly, Mihawk came down from upstairs with a black knife on his back. Doflamingo had a cigarette in his mouth, and when he saw Mihawk, he exhaled lightly and said, "Are you about to start?" "Yeah." Mihawk nodded calmly, then said, "Let's go." As soon as the words fell, Doflamingo stood up immediately, walked to the door of the hotel first, looked at the sunset outside, and said happily, "A beautiful day has begun." Honeycomb Island is not that big. The landmark building of the island is a earth building similar to a skull. And this was created by Rock's pirate back then, and now, Ochaku's headquarters camp is also located here. I heard that this skull has been blown up several times. After all, Ochaku is a big pirate of the New World, a silver medalist, and there are quite a few people who came to challenge him. It's just that every time after being destroyed, Ochaku will organize people to repair this place as soon as he has time. After crossing 2 streets, Doflamingo and Mihawk came to the skull building together. There was a younger brother from the Arcstar pirates standing at the door. When he saw Mihawk and Doflamingo, the younger brother's expression changed and he shouted, "I told you this morning, the deputy captain is not on the island." "A lie." Mihawk responded calmly. "I came here following Vicky's stare and saw him land on Beehive Island with my own eyes." Hearing this, the younger brother swallowed and said, "Maybe you misunderstood, anyway Mrs. Stayer will not accept your challenge." "Really?" Mihawk replied softly. After that, without any hesitation, he slowly took off the black knife yi that was carried behind his back, and held it in his hand. "Fur, it seems that your reputation is too bad, and many swordsmen don't want to duel with you," Doflamingo mocked. "Maybe it's because they're afraid of me," Mihawk retorted. At this moment, the little brother also said with a frightened expression, "Hey, what do you want to do? This is the territory of our arcstar pirates. If you dare to mess around, Boss Oaku will not let you go." Mihawk turned a deaf ear to this, and weighed the black knife in his hand. After the night, he opened his pace a little bit, pressed his waist, grabbed the handle of the knife with both hands, and made a slashing posture. Seeing this, Doflamingo took 2 steps back a little bit, and as soon as he stood still, he heard Mihawk shout loudly, "Dracula Mihawk, come on." As soon as the words fell, the long knife in Mihawk's hand slashed out, and instantly flew towards the huge skull building not far away. The younger brother looked at this scene in horror, and in the next moment, the tall skull was split open with a knife. When the skull was split in half, the entire Hive Island seemed to be quiet. "What's the situation? Chop, I saw Z's. Is it Master Stairs slash? What's going on? Has someone challenged Oaku boss again? If so, the challenger this time seems to be very strong. I saw Hawkeye Dracula Mihawk landed on the island yesterday, could it be that madman? Marine Hunter Mihawk." With a bang, a section of the skull that was split fell on the ground, smashing all the surrounding houses into ruins. 10 groups of little pirates ran around in panic. The smoke and dust from the collapse of this huge building covered hundreds of meters around it at an extremely fast speed, blocking everyone's sight. Doflamingo waved his hands in front of his nose in distaste, and couldn't help complaining. "It's really a matter of disagreement, Mihawk." "Here we come," Mihawk said through the smoke. His falcon-like eyes seemed to be completely unobstructed by the smoke and dust, seeing through everything except the dust. Sure enough, in the next second, a figure had already jumped in front of Mihawk. Doflamingo's strength lies here, and he can naturally see the situation clearly. He is a man who is about 2 meters tall, with a ponytail somewhat similar to Beckman's, that is, behind his head. Kai slapped his upper body, his muscles were very strong, and there were many large and small scars on his body. At first glance, he looked like a seasoned veteran. That guy was holding 2 knives in his hand. He turned out to be a rare swordsman with 2 knives. That face. Doflamingo looks familiar. If he was asked to recognize it before, he might not be able to recognize it, but today because of Mihawk, he has a deeper impression of the face. So he knows very well that this person is the vice captain of the Arcstar Pirates, Ochaku's right-hand man, the swordsman of the Sea of Anger, Vicky Ristel. A bounty of 642 million Baileys is offered. 2 slashes in a row broke through the smoke and dust, and attacked Mihawk. Mihawk's movements were also extremely fast. He lifted the black knife yi in his hand upwards, and at this extremely close distance, he accurately blocked the 2 slashing attacks of Wekrister, and at the same time, with a vibration of his wrist, the knife fell on the head. Wilkalisel blocked Mihawk's black knife with a single knife, while the other hand stabbed with a long knife. The blow really worked, and in the brief moment of hand-to-hand, Mihawk managed to push back a few steps, avoiding his thrust. "It's been said that I'm not around, which means I don't want to fight today. Why do you have to make things so embarrassing? Dracula Mihawk." After forcing Mihawk back, Wilkalisel put the knife on his shoulder with his left hand, and raised another long knife with his right hand, pointing at Mihawk, and said with a displeased face. It can be said that Mihawk, who has always had a very cold expression, at this moment, had a swordsman's smile on his face, looked at Will Crystal and said, "Life is always full of accidents like this, isn't it?" As the top swordsman, even though Mihawk has only fought against Willie Stair for a while, he has already confirmed that among all the swordsmen he has met before, he, Mihawk Kong, calls Willie Stair his concubine. And what he, Dracula Mihawk, pursues is such a stronger swordsman, a stronger opponent. He is playing the strongest. Just when Mihawk was about to make a move, suddenly, his falcon-like pupils contracted slightly for a moment, and the released observation Haki seemed to sense something. Sure enough, almost instantly, a taller figure appeared behind Mihawk. This figure looks about 3 meters long, similar to Doflamingo. Like Wilco Ristel, this guy's upper body is naked, but the difference is that the muscles on his body don't have the bloated and huge feeling like Wicker Ristel, but are very similar to Doflamingo, very tight. She has sharp black short hair, and she is wearing a pair of black exercise pants on her lower body, and a pair of ordinary cloth shoes on her feet. Doflamingo recognized at a glance that this is the common attire of West Blue Flower Country martial artists. Captain of arcstar pirates Ochaku. I heard that Ochaku is a great pirate from the country of flowers, but today I see it, and it is likely to be the case. Ochaku holds two weird weapons in his hand. One is a hook knife and the other is a bayonet hammer, and there is a chain connection between the hook knife and the bayonet hammer, so theoretically speaking, these two weapons should be qualitatively one. When this guy appeared, he didn't even intend to say a word. The hook knife in his hand went directly from behind Mihawk towards his throat, as if he wanted to cut Mihawk's throat. Mihawk frowned, and was about to make a move. Suddenly sensed something, so he stopped paying attention to Ochaku, and stared at you again, Vicolous. The next moment, Doflamingo's foot touched Ochaku's hook knife, blocking Ochaku's movement with a handsome half-pullback posture. It's not polite to interrupt a swordsman's duel. Doflamingo put his hands in the pockets of his suit trousers, looked at Ochaku evilly, and said with a smile. At this time, the young master is really very stylish. He was already wearing a handsome black suit and a pink flamingo feather coat on his shoulders. This splitting action perfectly showed his slender body proportions. Ochaku's hook knife was blocked. He looked at Doflamingo with some unpleasant eyes and said, "Is it polite to split Lousy's skull in two with one knife? How about I say sorry for him?" Doflamingo teased. But as soon as he finished speaking, Ochaku, who should have been in his line of sight, disappeared in the blink of an eye. The pupils under Doflamingo's sunglasses shrank, his ankles turned, and the figure quickly turned around in a circle. At the same time, his 5 fingers formed claws, and one claw moved forward. Sure enough, Ochaku's figure appeared behind Doflamingo at this moment, and at the same time, the hook knife slashed towards the back of Doflamingo's neck. With a thin transparent line between his fingers, Doflamingo blocked Ochaku's hook knife with one claw. Afterwards, Doflamingo said softly, "The ability of the space system. So that's the case, Paramecia teleportation fruit." Doflamingo didn't know much about Ochaku and didn't think he would deal with him before. But after all, Ochaku is a veteran strongman who has been famous for a long time in the sea, so Doflamingo thought about it for a while, and then remembered and released part of his information. That's right. Ochaku is also an ability user, and he is an ability user of Paramecia, and his ability is teleportation. The reaction speed is fast, kid, no wonder that Gaia Linlin has suffered in your hands, Ochaku said with a sneer. The two were in a stalemate for a moment, then pulled back at the same moment. Doflamingo took 2 steps back, and Ochaku also pulled a little distance away from him. But Ochaku was a little confused. Donquixote Doflamingo, if I remember correctly, isn't this guy Zone's phantom beast? Like a vampire? Why was he using silk thread just now? But obviously, Doflamingo didn't mean to explain to Ochaku at all. Instead he mocked. "I heard that you were the weakest on the Rock's ship back then, is it true or not?" "Hey." Ochaku sneered and said, "If you think you can piss off Lousy by talking such rubbish, you're underestimating me too much." After a pause, Ochaku grinned and said, "When Lousy was wandering in the sea, you were not born yet, kid. Regarding the matter of who is the weakest on the Rock's ship, there has actually been a conclusion in the sea. Basically, everyone thinks that the weakest is Treasure Captain John. Ochaku's strength should be very strong, otherwise he would not have been able to independently occupy the Hive Island under the New World 4 Emperor's structure until he was defeated by Blackbeard Marshal D. Teach. You know, during the period of the 4 Emperors pattern, New World was very scary. But for all the pirates who enter the New World, you either have to challenge the 4 Emperors, or you have to join the 4 Emperors, otherwise, you can't get along. However, this guy Ochaku has been able to occupy the Hive Island for decades. It can be seen that even the 4 Emperors, everyone has nothing to do, and they don't want to provoke this guy Ochaku. What is? This is a symbol of strength and status. With a flick of the chain in his hand, Ochaku took the lead in attacking. The hook knife with the chain came straight to Doflamingo, but this kind of offensive, in Doflamingo's view, was a bit of a joke. Even if it is attached to armament Haki. Without drawing the knife, Doflamingo flicked his wrist, and the black gemstone ring quickly released a large number of white threads, converging into a whip of white threads in an instant. Facing Ochaku's hook knife, Doflamingo whipped the past. With a snap, it missed Ochaku's hook knife halfway, and then Doflamingo flicked his hand, and whipped Ochaku again. There was a look of disdain on Ochaku's face, and he shook his hand vigorously. The hook knife that was originally entwined with chains suddenly straightened at this moment, and the chain seemed to have become an iron rod. At this time, this weapon is even more weird, with a hook knife at the front, a stabbing hammer at the back, and a straight and strong chain lock like an iron rod in the middle. Stamping his feet, Oaku stabbed forward with his arm. This weird weapon was about to hook Doflamingo's whip, and pulled again. The sharp hook knife directly cut off the white thread of the whip. At the same time, Ochaku's figure quickly approached Doflamingo. The weird weapon in his hand seemed to be playing with a flower gun. A round of phantom danced in his hand, and then he smashed Huashan and smashed at Doflamingo. This time, it's the hammer's end. Before he had time to think about it, Doflamingo pulled out the Zindu from his waist very decisively, and blocked the blow upwards, but before Doflamingo turned his defense into an attack. Seeing that Ochaku's arm shook again, the chain that was stretched straight into an iron rod softened at once, and the thorn head slid down, taking advantage of the trend, on Doflamingo's blade, and circled twice. Entangled. Oaku snorted. A flexible armament Haki quickly permeated along the chains, directly entangled Doflamingo's heart. Then Oaku slammed the lock, and Doflamingo had to take 2 steps forward to avoid Zindu being dragged away. Almost at the same moment when the distance approached, TNG and Doflamingo made moves at the same time. Both of them kicked at each other's figure, and after discovering each other's intentions, the kicks met in the air, bang bang bang, and they competed in kicking skills on the spot. Although it's good, it's far worse than lousy. Oaku kicked Doflamingo more than a dozen times in an instant, but at the last moment, it was Oaku who grabbed Doflamingo's ankle suddenly, and then with the force of his ankle, he forced Doflamingo's foot to the ground from the air. The strength of the two was so great that as soon as Doflamingo's feet hit the ground collapsed into a spiderweb. It has to be said that Oaku, who was born in the country of flowers, is an out-and-out martial arts master. One foot pressed Doflamingo's foot, Ochaku's figure jumped forward, and the chain in his hand snapped, and it was directly put on Doflamingo's arm. He twisted hard to lock Doflamingo's arm, and at the same time, the other hand turned into a fist, taking advantage of Doflamingo's arm being locked and one foot being pressed, making him inconvenient, he slammed into Doflamingo's heart. Profound truth orchid broken heart palm. At this moment, Doflamingo saw the flowing chi from the gap between Ochaku's palm and fingertips. This is it. Doflamingo was a little enlightened for a while, and a little dazed. Oaku was able to combine armament Haki and Qigong together. What kind of thinking is this? He also has the skills of Haki and Qigong, but Doflamingo has never considered this combination of powers before. Before Doflamingo could understand the situation, with a bang, TNG's palm had already landed on his heart. This blow was so powerful that Doflamingo's suit and inner lining were all blown apart. Not only that, but also a powerful force was revealed from the back. With both feet off the ground, Oaku loosened his wrist, and Doflamingo was directly sent flying. At this moment, Doflamingo's heart had an orchid-like imprint. However, Doflamingo's other hand was still firmly holding the handle of Zindu's knife, so he was only knocked away by 2 steps, and took advantage of the momentum to stabilize his figure. As soon as his feet landed, Doflamingo felt a surge of energy in his body, and then it exploded along the soles of his feet, and the ground was smashed into slag again. At the same time, Doflamingo swallowed a mouthful of old blood, which rushed from his throat to his mouth. Peeved. Doflamingo took the initiative to spit out the mouthful of blood, feeling that his breath was much better. He could feel that at that moment just now, his heart was indeed shattered once, but relying on his powerful vitality, the injury recovered almost the next moment when his energy exploded. As soon as Oaku waved his hand at this moment, the javelin chain that was originally wrapped around Zindu fell apart and was dragged back by him. At this moment, Oaku held a hook knife in one hand and a javelin in the other, and the chain circled around his shoulders. He raised one leg and stood in the distance with a handsome golden rooster independent posture. Interesting, in a normal defenseless state, if you get hit by my palm, it can be said that you will definitely die. I didn't expect you to be able to recover from this fatal injury in an instant. Oaku looked at Doflamingo with interest and said. It's just a fatal injury. Doflamingo replied softly. During the short fight, Doflamingo felt something strange, that is Oaku. His fighting skills seemed to be different from all the masters he met before. Garp can be considered a top fighter, but his fighting style, once he makes a move, he opens and closes, punches to the flesh, very tough. And in the sea, basically all the masters of fighting skills have this style, such as Zephyr, the Marine Admiral, is the same. Putting aside the simple non-capable people, such as Kaido, Charlotte Linlin, etc., once they use their own fighting skills, they can open and close, and they are extremely fierce. So Doflamingo is basically, it can be said to be of this genre. But Oaku is different. Ochaku's moves from the moment he started to the present are very fancy, with a feeling of acrobatics. This kind of skill itself should be very useless to top experts and should be discarded. But these fancy movements and skills, in the hands of Oaku, seem to come naturally. It seems fancy and impractical, but it actually hits you badly. It is precisely because he failed to adapt to Ochaku's fancy skills for a while, that Doflamingo was quickly suppressed before. The two looked at each other in silence for a moment, about 2 breaths, and then, as if they had a tacit understanding, Doflamingo's eyes flashed scarlet. Ochaku also kicked the ground suddenly, and the two figures rushed towards each other at the same time. But just when the two were about to collide and fight again, both Ochaku and Doflamingo's faces twitched slightly. The next moment, Doflamingo suddenly stopped in his tracks, and Ochaku activated his ability directly, disappeared in place, and moved back tens of meters. In the next second, Yului's slash, with a world-breaking momentum, passed in front of Doflamingo, plowing out a terrifying crack in the ground. That's right, if Doflamingo and Ochaku hadn't stopped just now, they should have collided with the front of this slash. Before Doflamingo could swear a few words, Vikrastel was holding 2 knives, turning over like a kite, and fell to the ground from the air, with bright red blood flowing from his forehead, slightly covering his left eye. At the same time, Mihawk was holding the black knife, and his whole body was bursting out with a strong fighting spirit. His eyes were fixed on Vicky Stare's body. Neither of the two spoke, and at almost the same moment, Willis Stare flicked both knives, and 2 slashes came out through the air. Mihawk also flashed the black knife in his hand, and rushed forward to face the slash. At the moment when Doflamingo was attracted by these two people, Ochaku's ability was activated, and the moment Mihawk slashed out, he appeared behind Mihawk, and with a hook knife, he attacked Mihawk's back again. "Are you underestimating me?" Doflamingo snapped his hands angrily. The scarlet blood shot out from Doflamingo's hand, like a blade cutting the ground. The blood condensed from the ground into a sharp blade, blocking Mihawk's body like a glass wall. Ochaku's hook knife slashed fiercely on Doflamingo's bloodblade, but it didn't work. It's really a convenient ability. Ochaku looked at the bloodblade in front of him that blocked his attack, and said softly. On Hive Island, in the towns outside the skull, many pirates climbed on the roof, observing the current situation. And as the smoke and dust caused by the collapse of the huge skull before gradually dissipated. Nowadays, most people also see this situation clearly. First of all, there are indeed swordsmen fighting against each other. They are the vice-captain of the Arcstar pirates, Wick Ristel, and Dracule Mihawk, who has been in the limelight at sea during this time, and has declared that he wants to win the title of the world's #1 swordsman. The frequency of the two fighting is very high, almost in the blink of an eye. There will be dozens of slashes colliding together, and the figures of the two are constantly intertwined. Every time they meet, Haki's hedging will explode. The battle was very intense and very exciting. In addition, the master of the Hive Island, a veteran strongman who has traveled all over the world for decades, the great pirate Ochaku, is also fighting with others. Soon, everyone recognized each other. "Good guy, I just saw him in the newspaper this morning. 7 warlords of the sea, Heavenly Yaksha Donquixote Doflamingo." "Why did Heavenly Yaksha go to war with Ochaku-sama?" "I don't know. When did he come? Are the cadres of the Donquixote family here?" "No, if it is, it will be a total war. I heard that Dracule Mihawk and Donquixote Doflamingo are very good friends. Is it because of this reason? Then what is their purpose? Mihawk is supposed to challenge Master Stare, if Doflamingo. Does he want to take the Hive Island?" Just as the pirates were communicating with each other, suddenly, Doflamingo spread his bat wings behind him and flew into the air, and a red light flashed suddenly, almost blinding everyone's eyes. One of the pirates was the first to notice something was wrong. "Why are you injured?" A certain pirate pointed to his companion and asked. The companion was stunned for a moment, then looked down, and there was a cut on his arm that was accused of being injured. Seeing the traces of the wound, he said nonchalantly, "It's nothing. Maybe when I climbed up to the roof just now, I accidentally rubbed it somewhere. Help." That's right. Before this guy could finish his sentence, the wound opened suddenly and became very terrifying. A large amount of blood gushed out from his wound. Almost instantly, the blood in his body was drained and he turned into a mummy. And after the blood left his body, it exploded in the crowd like a bomb, injuring many people again. In the blink of an eye, only a large piece of mummified corpses remained on the roof. The blood gathered into a torrent and quickly spread across the entire Hive Island. On the clock tower, a marine agent is reporting the news to the phone bug. Yes, it is certain that it is the cooperation of 7 warlords of the sea, Heavenly Yaksha Donquixote Doflamingo and Dracule Mihawk. They are fighting on the Hive Island and are fighting with Ochaku and Vicky Star. At present, the two sides are evenly matched, but this is the base camp of the Arcstar pirates. If there are any cadres, the marine said, hearing the screams around him. He stood up, looked out, and then saw a river of scarlet blood attacking him from the air. "No. Don't!" Agent Marine wailed. The torrent of blood submerged him, and when he reappeared, he was already a mummy. With a bang, he fell on the bell tower, broke into several pieces, and dropped a lot of dross. Hey, berries? Are you okay? What happened? The phone bug yelled a few times, but never got a response. G1 Marine Base, Sengoku and other Marine bosses have just returned here. They would rest here before crossing the Red Line to escort Douglas Bullet back to Naval Headquarters and eventually through the Gateway of Justice to Imperton for his sleep. After getting off the boat, Sengoku stretched a little and said, "After this matter is settled, we can almost draw up the task arrangement for this World Summit." "You are the best at this kind of clerical scheduling work," Garp said with a smile. "Yeah, it can be considered as a vacation," Sengoku frowned and said with a smile. Compared to going out to sea to fight and kill, Sengoku hopes to spend every day peacefully. The two had just chatted for a few words, when they saw Chief Staff Officer Suru walking towards this side. As soon as Sengoku saw Suru, he cheered up, straightened his back, tried to make himself look handsome, and waved. "Oh, Xiaohei, I heard that we are back, so you came here to meet us? Ha 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 ha." Chief Staff Officer Suru didn't respond with a smile on his face, and walked over in a few steps. Sengoku and Garp frowned when they saw Suru's Chief Staff Officer's expression, realizing something. Garp was the first to ask, "Did something happen, Xiaohei?" Chief Staff Officer Suru nodded and said, "That guy Doflamingo is making a big fuss on Hive Island." "Making trouble on Hive Island?" Sengoku was stunned for a moment, and then quickly reacted, and asked in surprise, "He went to trouble Oaku?" "That's right," Chief Staff Officer Suru responded. "I'm also very surprised. Before this, we have never investigated any conflicts between Doflamingo and Oaku, so this conflict came very suddenly. This guy, if he spreads the situation, he may become the trigger for a new round of war in New World." Sengoku frowned. Doflamingo is the 7 warlords of the sea, and his actions, in some cases, are likely to be interpreted as the ruler of the world. At this time, Doflamingo, who is 7 warlords of the sea, suddenly attacked the Arcstar pirates who had no hatred, and made a sun on Ochaku's Hive Island. This situation is very likely to be interpreted by the rest of the great pirates of New World as the world government is about to start attacking New World. At that time, everyone will become very nervous, and there will be panic. If in this situation, if something happens by accident, it is not impossible for melee to break out. Didn't he say before that he should go back to rest and prepare to participate in the World Summit? Why did it suddenly become like this? Garp was also very confused. After thinking for a while, Sengoku said, "Although we must pay close attention to the situation on Hive Island, we Marines must not act aggressively at this time, so as not to cause those guys to go berserk." After a pause, Sengoku waved his hand again and said, "As for that guy Doflamingo, let him go." At this time, Sengoku recalled what Doflamingo had said to him when he left. "I always feel that if I provoke Doflamingo again during this period of time, maybe I will really irritate this guy. When he goes crazy and does something irreversible, it will be troublesome." So Sengoku decided not to provoke Doflamingo in this short period of time. The reason why Marine was able to receive news from Hive Island so quickly was because Hive Island, as the most famous pirate paradise in the New World, of course needs to be followed. In the same way, not only Marine, but also a large number of pirate forces also have their own stocking on Hive Island. Therefore, when Doflamingo and Ochaku worked together, Kaido, Charlotte Linlin, Whitebeard, Silver Axe and other major pirates in New World all received the news. Everyone was puzzled. What kind of medicine did Doflamingo take wrongly? Why did he have to make trouble with Ochaku? Meanwhile, on Beehive Island, Ochaku's figure flickers across the island. And several torrents of blood, like beasts chasing their prey, shuttled back and forth across the island, chasing down the traces of Ochaku. On the roof, as soon as the flashing Ochaku stood firm, a torrent of blood chased after it, and with a bang, it directly collapsed and destroyed the huge house, crushed into ruins. However, Ochaku's figure teleported away a second before being hit, and appeared on the distant clock tower. Looking down from this height, Ochaku can see that many people died on Beehive Island, but it seems that Doflamingo didn't really want to kill them all. In fact, Doflamingo really kept his hand, otherwise he could kill all the trash fish and pirates on this island in a few minutes. Not all of these torrents of blood were contributed by the people on Hive Island. Most of them were the power contained in the few blood beads that Doflamingo carried with him. In the sky, Doflamingo's bat wings spread out. Under the faint starlight and moonlight, he hangs in the sky like a demon king who destroys the world. Several torrents of blood, like flowing red silk, circle around Doflamingo from time to time, making him more imposing. After several fierce fights before, Doflamingo can be sure that he can never be the main opponent by relying on close combat, martial arts, fighting skills and other aspects of competition. Even in terms of taijutsu, Doflamingo would like to call Ochaku the strongest. At least the strongest he has ever seen. So Doflamingo resolutely gave up the fight with Ochaku, and directly chose to use his ability to overwhelm others with power. From the current point of view, Doflamingo has indeed regained its original disadvantage. On one side, Doflamingo manipulated the blood to pursue Ochaku. On the other side, Mihawk also opened up and closed, almost flattening half of the Hive Island. The duel between him and Willis Stare has not yet been decided. The level of kendo between the two, Yiping feels like they are rivals. Mihawk even felt that if he hadn't been persistently challenging the swordsman and breaking through himself since he entered the Grand Line, otherwise, he would face Vicky Stare. Even more likely to lose. But in just a split second, Mihawk's falcon-like eyes lit up again, and he shouted, "But now I will never lose." At the same time as the voice fell, he slashed out with a sharp knife, splitting the sky and the ground again, forcing Vicky Stare to retreat. A hook knife broke up the oncoming blood flow, the fluctuation of space energy on Ochaku's body flashed, and the figure disappeared in place in an instant. The Doflamingo observation Haki flying in the air is always on, just to track Ochaku. So when Ochaku's figure disappeared, Doflamingo raised his arm suddenly. A large amount of blood instantly gathered into a round shield, blocking in front of him. The next moment, Ochaku had already appeared here, and punched Doflamingo's blood shield fiercely. With a bang, the blood shield exploded and dispersed like fireworks. But before the blood fell, Doflamingo squeezed his palm falsely. The blood that was about to explode and fall turned into sharp needles and rushed towards Ochaku. Damn it! Ochaku cursed, swished, and disappeared again, causing countless needles to fail. In a blink of an eye, Doflamingo looked at a house not far below, where Ochaku was standing. While shaking the chain and spinning the hook knife, he looked at Doflamingo with troubled eyes. "I hate opponents like you the most," Ochaku said in a slightly displeased tone. As a user with the ability to teleport fruit, coupled with the strength of close combat, Ochaku's fighting direction has always maintained the elements of fast, accurate, and ruthless. He can be regarded as a standard assassin. When fighting with people, advocate relying on ghost-like body skills, hit will kill. But when you meet someone like Doflamingo, he's going to be hard to deal with. First, although Doflamingo's observation Haki has not met the future, it can be said to be very powerful when it cooperates with the radar developed by the ability. Ochaku's teleportation is also difficult to escape Doflamingo's observation Haki tracking. Therefore, it is difficult for Ochaku to deal damage to Doflamingo. Secondly, even if it succeeds once in a while and hits Doflamingo, the problem is, Doflamingo is immortal. He crushed his heart before, and the guy didn't die. Ochaku also hooked Doflamingo twice with a hook knife afterwards, but the injuries he caused were all healed within a short breath. This makes Ochaku very limited. On the Rocks ship that year, the two people he hated the most were Charlotte Linlin and Kaido. Both of these two are monsters with extraordinary talents. Kaido can forget it, he was not a phantom beast at the time, although he was rough-skinned and thick-skinned, he couldn't always win. As for Charlotte Linlin, Ochaku never defeated her in countless fights on the ship, the reason is that she couldn't be beaten. He can hurt Charlotte Linlin countless times, but it doesn't matter to that guy's physique, but as long as he makes a mistake, he will be smashed by Charlotte Linlin. Except for the two of them, Ochaku and Shiki, and Whitebeard have never been so frustrated before. Therefore, for a long time, Ochaku has had a psychological shadow on these talented monsters. Now, I met a bastard like Doflamingo again, with thick blood, immune to death. The key is that observation Haki is ridiculously strong, restraining his mobility to the limit. In a trance, Ochaku even had the fear of being dominated by Charlotte Linlin when he was still on the Rocks ship many years ago. In fact, it's not just Ochaku that's like this. Shiki, Whitebeard, and even Garp, top players with conventional physiques, will feel uncomfortable when facing monsters like Charlotte Linlin and Kaido. Whitebeard is not bad, he also has a feeling of a bit of talent. In the top battle, he has suffered so much damage, and he can have the strength to fight. As for Shiki, although Haki's strength was not able to be exerted due to a head injury in the later period, and he was weakened by the limit, but if he had a physique as talented as Charlotte Linlin, it would not be said that he was hammered by Luffy, it would be Shaw. As for Garp, it was even more sad, he was seriously injured by Shiryu casually, and in the end he almost lost his hatred on the Hive Island. Or, is the version going to follow the protagonist? You don't have a strong physique, and you don't have any special talents. You'd better have the ability of Zone, so that you can fight a little bit. If you are lucky enough to pick up the Phantom Beast species and keep up with the version answer, then as long as you don't slack off, you can make a name for yourself no matter what. Now, Ochaku is like this, Doflamingo can make countless mistakes, but he only needs to be caught by Doflamingo once, and he will be screwed. In the sky, looking at Ochaku's obviously very unhappy face, Doflamingo put on a provocative smile and said, "What? Is that the level? The legendary big pirate? Is nothing more than that? Bastard." Ochaku cursed. He knew that this was Doflamingo deliberately provoking him and irritating him, but at this moment, being looked down upon by Doflamingo so condescendingly, it is really uncomfortable. Taking a deep breath, Ochaku glanced at his little brother Vickery Stare again, secretly thinking, if Stare can handle Mihawk, then they can deal with Doflamingo with his hands free, then they can still wrestle with each other. As a result, this glance made Ochaku's mentality a little bit broken. At the beginning of the fight, Willis Stare and Mihawk could be said to be evenly matched, but no matter how they fight, it depends on the momentum of Mihawk getting stronger and more fierce. And Wilkester is getting better and better. Looking at the past now, Mihawk is chasing and slashing at will, that guy only has room to parry, and it is difficult to fight back at all. If this trend continues, Wilkester will soon be unable to hold back. The swordsman's duel is like this: once one side falls into a clear disadvantage, and at the same time can't explode, then relying on the swordsman's high attack, the outcome will be given quickly. In the end, I can only rely on myself, Ochaku muttered in his heart, his expression becoming more and more irritable. Just at this moment, Doflamingo moved, his arm was raised again, several torrents of blood rushed towards Ochaku like beams of light blooming from his body. This move can also be called Holy Bullet Point God Killing. Doflamingo pushed forward with one arm. A little under Ochaku's feet, the figure suddenly disappeared, and then, the tall and solid house was instantly hit by dozens of blood torrents, and collapsed into ruins on the spot. Sensing the figure of Ochaku, Doflamingo raised his hand abruptly, and a torrent of blood burst out from his palm, and at the same time, it was attached with rich armament Haki. Sure enough, Ochaku's figure appeared within the range of this blow, but his speed was extremely fast. After noticing Doflamingo's offensive, it seemed to be flickering. Just look at Doflamingo's torrent of blood wrapped in Haki, like a knight's spear, piercing Ochaku's phantom fiercely. It won't work like this, Doflamingo thought to himself. Ochaku has nothing to do with him, but for now, I have nothing to do with Ochaku. That guy's speed is too fast, he can teleport everywhere. Although my speed is not slow, I really can't catch up with him. Sell a flaw. Doflamingo thought so in his heart, sell a flaw, and give Ochaku a chance to injure himself severely, so at that time, counterattack. Try to see if you can get the master straight. Doflamingo has already had a clear judgment on Ochaku at this time. He is indeed strong, but he does not have the weird physique like Kaido and Charlotte Linlin. Therefore, as long as there is a chance to hit Ochaku, Doflamingo feels that he can seriously injure Ochaku and break this weird stalemate. While thinking about this, Doflamingo also quickly fought against Ochaku several times, stirring up a lot of blood in the air, but it didn't work. A hook knife flew from the side, and the white thread in Doflamingo's hand exploded, like a frenzied group of snakes, swish, 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 and tangled the chain of the hook knife. Drink. While Doflamingo was entangled with the hook knife, he suddenly tried to pull the hook knife with his arm. At the same time, Ochaku was standing on the top floor of the clock tower, and he also exerted force with his arms. In an instant, the white line and the chain collapsed, and neither of them wanted to give in, as if they were in a tug of war. But Doflamingo still has a backhand. This kind of pulling can just restrict Ochaku's movement, so at this moment of wrestling, the blood flowing in the air flows at an extremely fast speed. Converged into a cloud. Bloody rain. Doflamingo said with a low voice. The energy of this blood cloud surged, and a large amount of blood turned into 1,000 needles, like a dense rain curtain, bursting out towards Ochaku's position. The dense blood-colored rain curtain enveloped Ochaku and everything within a 100-meter range around it. Ochaku's complexion changed, he hesitated for a moment, his wrist flicked violently, and at the same time he stopped the stalemate with Doflamingo. He even took the initiative to throw the hook knife towards Doflamingo. Then, his figure rushed to the moment before the rain fell, and disappeared decisively in place. Immediately afterwards, the blood needles bombarded Ochaku's original location in a gust of wind and rain, instantly submerging the clock tower. At the same time, it can be seen that the blood needles like 1,000 needles will quickly dissolve the building when it is pierced on the surface of the building. That's right, this is a corrosive 1,000 Ben blood needle. But if you get a needle, it is possible to infect the blood in your body and suffer from Doflamingo's blood plague. With a jerk of his arm, he used the white thread to pull the chain lock of the hook knife. Doflamingo raised his hand and prepared to play with the hook knife of Ochaku. Just when Doflamingo was about to grab the hook knife in his hand, Ochaku's figure suddenly appeared beside the hook knife, grabbed the handle of the knife, and shouted, Because I captured my weapon, are you careless? The powerful armament Haki erupted from Ochaku's arm, instantly turning the hook knife into black. At this moment, the distance between the two was extremely close, and Ochaku slashed at Doflamingo's neck without even thinking about it, wanting to kill him directly. But at the moment when Ochaku made a move, alarm bells rang in his heart. It's not observation Haki, nor is it foreseeing the future, it's just a pure, instinctive perception of danger. This is the intuition of the strong. Fighting in the sea for many years, this intuition has saved Wang Zhong many times. Therefore, Ochaku trusted this intuition very much. Even though the opportunity to strike the owl's head was right in front of him, he still gave up decisively. With a bang, the teleportation ability was activated, and he disappeared in front of Doflamingo. And at the same moment, when he disappeared, a blood mist exploded from Doflamingo's body. Looking carefully, under the cover of the blood mist, there were still a large number of dense and opaque silk threads, sealing off the surrounding area. Just one step away. Doflamingo's face was filled with annoyance. On the half of the skull, Ochaku gently landed on the top, looking at the bloody Doflamingo. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly and said, "It's really despicable." Soon, the thick blood mist was absorbed by Doflamingo. He flapped his wings twice, looked at Ochaku and said, "The opportunity to hit the owl's head is right in front of you, and you can let it go. You are too cautious, right?" Ochaku was playing with his hook knife, and there was a slight smile on the corner of his mouth. "This sea is very dangerous. If you are not careful, if you are as strong as this, you will fall into a place of eternal doom." After a pause, Ochaku said in a deep voice, "Donquixote Doflamingo, I admit that you are very strong, at least I can't defeat you at the moment, but you also have nothing to do with me, right?" "So?" Doflamingo raised his chin slightly and asked a little arrogantly. "To be honest, we haven't even met before today. We have no grudges in the past and have no grudges in the present. It's too unreasonable for you to suddenly run into my territory and make a big fuss. If I can take you down, I will definitely hang your head on the port for public display. But now, how about taking a step back?" Ochaku said directly. TNG wouldn't have lowered his head if he couldn't beat the bastard Doflamingo. "I don't think I may not have a chance to win you." Doflamingo refused. Hearing this, Ochaku said with a gloomy face, "Are you really going to have this enmity with me and never end it?" Doflamingo laughed, and then said, "Don't pretend to be too generous, Ochaku. Hasn't the grudge been forged from the moment we started? Don't we just stop here, and you will treat today's incident as if it never happened? From a rational point of view, it is completely meaningless to make a fuss on the Hive Island today." First of all, Ochaku did not provoke him to Doflamingo, and neither party had any enmity before. Even when Doflamingo beat Charlotte Linlin to New World on Cress Island, Ochaku even praised Doflamingo after knowing about it. At that time, Tien Naoki Doflamingo was very appreciative. After all, he's always had a hard time seeing Charlotte Linlin too. But Doflamingo still decided to join hands with Mihawk to make a scene. The reason is very simple, and it has nothing to do with any interests or rationality. It's just that he is upset and wants to vent it out. Not to mention, pressing down on Ochaku and forcing Ochaku to lower his head and want to expose this incident. Doflamingo's mood is really much happier, and the previous irritated feelings have also dissipated. But still the same sentence, from the time of the strike, this grievance has already been forged. No matter whether he stops at this time, Doflamingo believes that if there is a chance to make trouble in the future, Ochaku will never let it go. That being the case, who is going to take a step back? After Doflamingo's voice fell, Ochaku didn't speak again, but the anger in his eyes was more intense than before. "I think he, Ochaku, has been a werewolf who has traveled across the sea for decades, and today he has to bow his head to the young man Doflamingo, which is already a big concession. As a result, this guy doesn't talk about martial arts, and he doesn't mean to stop at all." As soon as the anger came up, Ochaku seemed to have made a decision in his heart, and he said in a deep voice, "If that's the case, then come on." With the fall of this voice, Doflamingo keenly discovered that Ochaku's aura actually strengthened again. Not only that, the fluctuation of space energy emanating from him. It seems to be more violent, not an illusion. Because in the next second, Doflamingo will be able to observe the surging space ripples around Ochaku with the naked eye. But after a closer look, you can find that the rhythm of this energy seems to be that Ochaku has not fully grasped it yet. "Awakening?" Doflamingo said with a shudder in his heart. This is very likely to be the awakening of Ochaku's ability, or in other words, he has entered this level recently, but he has not fully mastered this power. After all, the ability of the space system is really difficult to control. With the spread of Ochaku's energy fluctuations, some ruins and buildings around him began to appear looming. Doflamingo suddenly reacted. No wonder Ochaku was unwilling to use this kind of power before. On the one hand, it is because he is not proficient in mastering it, and it can even be said that there is a risk of losing control. On the other hand, because Hive Island is his base camp, he can do nothing about Doflamingo if he plays big here, but Oaku is just a direct loss. Just like when Doflamingo fought Sengoku in Cervantes, after the incident, Sengoku patted his ass and left, and his Doflamingo family was gone. Awakening is really an enviable power, Doflamingo said with a little emotion. I don't know when his fruit ability will be awakened. At that time, he may really be able to become an immortal body who can keep doing sit-ups. And what effect will the awakening of the vampire's ability bring? But thinking about it carefully, I have only acquired the ability for a few years. Although the development is good, it has not reached the limit. If I want to awaken the ability, I guess it is still far away. In this sea, the King Luffy who opened the biggest hook took more than 10 years to awaken his ability. Thinking about it this way, I don't feel anxious anymore. Seeing that Oaku is going to expand, Doflamingo's expression also becomes more serious. What kind of performance does the awakening of the teleportation fruit, gold, look like? Thinking about it, there is even some expectation. Circles of energy halos continuously spread out from Ochaku's body. Wherever this space energy halo passed, all the objects touched seemed to be hollowed for a moment, as if they had disappeared in place for a moment. But at the moment when Doflamingo was concentrating and Oaku was fully charged, a slash abruptly pierced through the open space between the two of them, and at the end of the slash, Vicky's stare was still crushed. Then, an extremely strong momentum erupted. Both Doflamingo and Oaku were stunned for a moment, and then their eyes were all attracted by the figure exuding a strong momentum. Conqueror's awakening! Doflamingo exclaimed in surprise. That's right, at this moment, Mihawk is holding the black knife Yi, and the aura on his body seems to be condensed into ultimate. At the same time, his innate conqueror's Haki was born out of the cocoon at this moment. This extremely strong aura soared into the sky, as if it was about to tear the sky above the Hive Island, and in this extremely strong aura, Doflamingo even felt the sharp edge. Dracule Mihawk, the conquerors of the world's #1 swordsman in the future, is like a peerless famous sword, it's out. As this, conquerors? Mihawk murmured softly. When he left East Blue with Doflamingo, Mihawk also saw Doflamingo demo his conquerors. Since then, Mihawk has been very interested in Conqueror's Haki, and Doflamingo said with certainty that he must have Mihawk, but it may not have developed this innate history. Seriously. Mihawk is also very confident, and he thinks he must have it too. After all, he believes from the bottom of his heart that he is the man who will surely ascend to the throne of the King of Swordsmanship. As the destined King of Swordsmanship, how could he not have conquerors? It's just that before that, Mihawk really didn't channel out the power in his body. To this day, in the fierce battle between him and Vicrystal, he went from being evenly matched at the beginning, to gradually condensing his aura on his body, and finally to overwhelm others with his power. Mihawk felt as if a force was about to erupt from his celestial cap. He obeyed the power within himself, and then, conquerors broke out. Among the ruins, Wei Calistier's double knife style has become a single knife style, and there is still a deep slash injury on his shoulder. He pushed away the stone that was pressing on his chest and stood up staggeringly. His gaze was fixed on Mihawk at the end of the slashing trajectory, holding a black knife Yi, Mihawk who looked like a swordsman king. At this moment, he saw Mihawk's confident and calm appearance, and he was not surprised by the awakening of Conqueror's Haki. Also at this moment, he seemed to see the future from Mihawk, that is the end of the swordsman, the throne of the swordsman, that is, the #1 in the world. Asterisk, is it the strongest? While Crystal's mind was shaken, in front of Mihawk, his confidence as a top swordsman seemed to be shattered. When he saw the future from Mihawk, he even felt that at this moment, he would die without regret. What is a protagonist? Mihawk is undoubtedly the protagonist of the swordsman in this world and in this era. Conqueror's Haki entanglement. Doflamingo once told him a little technique, but Doflamingo felt that it was just casual talk. But at this time, Mihawk, a swordsman who just awakened conquerors, is already trying to master this power. On the hilt of black knife Yi, Mihawk's palm tightened, and it seemed to be a little more forceful. Immediately, the dark green conquerors, as sharp as a slash, quickly surrounded Mihawk's palm and spread upwards. It was almost a short moment of 2 breaths. This peerless famous knife was already entwined with Conqueror's Haki. Doflamingo was stunned at this time. You know, he awakened conquerors at the age of 8, but it took a long time to truly master the conqueror's entanglement. But what about Mihawk? On the day of awakening, you can already use this power. Not only Doflamingo was stunned, Oaku was also stunned, and this kind of operation. One way of the sword, I am the strongest. Mihawk's eyes were solidified for a moment, and he locked on the figure of Will Astaire, and then, the black knife Yi in his hand, slashed and fell. Wei Calistie seemed to have given up everything, watching the sword fall and the slash attacking obsessively. He seems to be here, to meet the end of the world. When Oaku saw this situation, his face changed drastically. Bastard, do you want to die? The moment the voice fell, Oaku had already appeared in front of Willis Stair. The hook knife in his hand also brought a strong conqueror's entanglement, and he met Mihawk's slash with one blow. Also at this moment, Doflamingo's blood burst into the night sky with a murderous intent. Two extremely powerful conquerors collided together, stirring up the heaven and the earth. Ochaku's face stiffened as he resisted Mihawk's slash that carried out the ultimate power of the sword. The ground under his feet began to crumble, and the power of the slash pressed him to move backwards. Damn it. Let me just say that I'm not good at doing this kind of thing, Oaku cursed. This was a hasty response, but Mihawk's attack can be said to be his peak attack so far, and he is not very good at such head-to-head confrontation. Even his conqueror's Haki is not weak, but when faced with the ultimate slash, it still started to crumble. It's too late, but it's fast. As if seizing the opportunity, Doflamingo's blood bloomed in the night sky. Oaku wanted to hide, but he was capable of dodging himself. Whether it's Mihawk's slash or Doflamingo's attack, Oaku is confident that as long as he wants to dodge, there is no attack in this world that he can't dodge. But, at this moment, he really can't hide. Once he dodges, the next second, the tranced Wekrister, his right-hand man, his good brother who has fought with him all over the world for many years, will definitely die under this blow. Stare. Oaku yelled angrily, wanting to wake up Vicky Stare. In fact, when Ochaku's roar reached Stare's ears behind him, Stare, who was originally in a trance, suddenly came back to his senses. But in the next moment, the torrent of blood turned into a sharp spear, piercing Ochaku's chest viciously. Captain! Will Crystal exclaimed. The bloody spear pierced through Oaku, shaking Ochaku's momentum and dissipating a lot. At the same time, the already irresistible slash completely crushed him. With a bang, the hook knife in his hand broke, and then, Mihawk's slash hit his chest fiercely. While blood was flying, Ochaku's figure flew backwards. At this moment, Will Calisal had recovered his senses, took a step forward, embraced Ochaku's heavily injured figure, and shouted in grief, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault." However, before he finished speaking, the wound on Ochaku's body spurted out a large amount of blood again. It's Doflamingo's blood siphon. At the same time, there is also a corrupt blood plague, which has entered Ochaku's body. However, Vicky Star is not really just dragging his feet. When he saw the wounded blood on Ochaku's chest turning black and rotted at a speed visible to the naked eye, the remaining blade in his hand slashed across Ochaku's wound at an extremely fast speed, cutting off another piece of flesh and blood for Ochaku abruptly, preventing the spread of the blood plague. Ochaku seemed to have only one breath left at this time, and said with very weak eyes, "Grab my hand." At this moment, in the night sky, the bloody rain curtain burst towards them in a violent storm. But in the next moment, just when the murderous rain curtain was about to drown Ochaku and Willis Stare together, their figures disappeared under the surge of space energy. Immediately afterwards, the blood rain washed the ground, and the bombardment of this piece of ground was full of potholes, and a large amount of corrosive blood plundered and destroyed all life on the ground. And then, Doflamingo landed on the ground, looking at the empty and potholed ground. Observation Haki has already enveloped the entire Hive Island, but after a long time, Doflamingo said slightly regretfully, "Is it gone?" Being able to transfer himself and his companions away from the island in an instant, it can be seen that Ochaku's development of the ability to teleport fruit is very profound. However, Doflamingo did not rule out the possibility that Ochaku would die afterwards. After all, that guy first ate his own blood spear, which was directly pierced through his chest and back, and then he was slashed on the body by Mihawk, and then he sucked out a lot of blood from his body. In the case of such a serious injury, he still insisted on mobilizing his ability, and moved Will Crystal and himself out of the Hive Island. After this series of reactions, it is very likely that Ochaku will die quickly when he leaves the battlefield. Thinking about it now, if Ochaku hadn't died, there's a good chance something would happen later. This guy's ability is elusive, and his strength is also very strong. If you are ruthless, you will be shameless and go for a sneak attack. It is really a high threat. It's no wonder that in the original story, he occupied the Hive Island for so many years, and the four emperors were unwilling to provoke him. But think about it again. Ochaku, as a veteran and strong man in the sea, has the dignity he should have. If he can survive, maybe he will find him Doflamingo to take revenge, but he shouldn't surrender his status to attack his Donquixote family's younger brother, right? Otherwise it is too cheap. In many cases, the strong regard dignity as more important than their own lives. Thinking of this, Doflamingo felt a little more relieved, smiled to himself and said, "Sure enough, if you do things too much, there will be such a situation that will plant disasters." If he hadn't stepped into the muddy water and made a big fuss on the Hive Island, naturally he wouldn't have offended Wang Dao. But Doflamingo looked at the bright moonlight and didn't have any regrets. After slashing with the power of Conqueror's Haki, Mihawk seemed to have some new experience in swordsmanship. He didn't make any extra movements, but just stood there in a daze with his eyes closed, trying to understand something. Doflamingo didn't bother him either, lit a cigarette, sat on the rocks of the ruins, and let out a breath of smoke leisurely, feeling much better all over. After a long time, Mihawk opened his eyes, and a sharp edge flashed in those hawk-like pupils, but it disappeared quickly. He looked at Doflamingo, who was sitting on a rock not far away, with a smile on his face and said, "They ran away? Well, Oaku is seriously injured. That guy named Stare seems to be a little injured too, right? But Ochaku's ability is teleportation, and he has already developed his ability to the level of awakening. If he wants to escape, there is really no one in this sea who can catch him." Doflamingo responded casually. In the original story, Oaku was defeated by Teach, but Teach has dark fruit. If Teach is caught by surprise, it can indeed pose a great threat to Oaku. In addition, I don't know what happened. In short, there is that fellow Kebi who made trouble in it. Trafalgar Law became 7 warlords of the sea. In the end, according to Teach, it was under Kebi's interference that he defeated Oaku. And this ability to teleport fruit later also appeared on Teach's sniper Itokoshi Van Oka. It can be seen that Ochaku's final fate should be cold. Teleport. That's really a powerful ability, Mihawk nodded. After mastering this ability, it can basically be said that the survivability has been greatly improved. If you reach the state of Oaku, if you are not restrained, you will indeed feel a bit innately invincible. After a pause, Mihawk said again, "But if Oaku escapes, does the Hive Island have been breached by us? Will your Donquixote family occupy this place?" "No," Doflamingo immediately shook his head and said. "Beehive Island." Calculated in this way, it can indeed be said that he, Doflamingo and Mihawk jointly breached it, although, from the beginning to the end, it seems that the rest of the arcstar pirates did not appear. But obviously, Doflamingo has no idea of occupying this place, because the geographical location of the Hive Island is not suitable for his strategic plan. Honeycomb Island feels like it is located in the central waters of the New World. According to the future development trend, it will become the junction point of many pirate forces. It is estimated that everyone will not occupy this place, and I also want to leave this place as a buffer. Doflamingo thinks so too. At most, it is enough to requisition a ship from the port, transfer the property belonging to Oaku on the island, and count it as the labor fee and appearance fee this time. As for this island, whoever wants it, even if Oaku comes back later, it doesn't matter. After roughly chatting with Mihawk about the spoils, Doflamingo asked curiously again, "Are you sure you just awakened the power of conquerors for the first time?" "I'm sure, although I always believed that I have it, but it is indeed the first time I use it," Mihawk said very calmly. "Then how did you wake up the conquerors and at the same time be able to make the conquerors entangle?" Doflamingo asked very curiously. Mihawk frowned slightly, and after thinking for a moment, he said, "How did you do it? Shouldn't it be logical? I thought, so I did it." Doflamingo looked at Mihawk's calm expression, and after a moment of silence, he said, "The sea really cares for you enough, is this chasing you to feed you?" Mihawk smiled and said, "Don't say that, I, Mihawk, can achieve what I am today, it all depends on my own hard work." Doflamingo really wanted to give Mihawk a single, and shouted, "Dahai, show me your limit, add some points," but in the end he shook his head and stopped teasing. Soon, Mihawk took out a stack of papers from his pocket, and after spreading them out, he took out a pen from somewhere on his body, searched for it, and crossed out Wei Kalisi because of your name. Watching this scene, Doflamingo asked, "What are you going to do next? Go hunting?" While saying this, Doflamingo even saw the names of Gion, Cake, Ghost Spider, Flying Squirrel and other marine generals from Mihawk's prey list. Some have been crossed out, but some are still there, which means Mihawk hasn't cut them yet. Sure enough, this guy's title of Marine Hunter is not for nothing. I haven't figured it out yet, but Marine has been hunting me all this time. Do you think there is any way to solve this problem? Mihawk asked. Don't cut Marine and Marine won't chase you. Doflamingo rolled his eyes and said. Mihawk hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, No, there are many swordmasters in Marine. Their swordsmanship is also unique, and it is a unique style of Marine. I still need to fight with more Marine swordmasters to understand this style. Either, you join my Donquixote family, as my 7 warlords of the sea, and when you challenge the Marine swordsman in the future, as long as you don't kill anyone, it should be fine. Or, you can directly become a 7 warlords of the sea yourself, and then use your privileges to challenge the marine swordsman. That's fine too, so that marine won't trouble you after it's done. Doflamingo said. 7 warlords of the sea. Mihawk stroked the beard on his chin, nodded and said, I did think about this before. Well, then you can help me tell the world government and see if they are willing. Okay. Doflamingo replied immediately. Although Mihawk still cleverly rejected his solicitation, but Doflamingo didn't care too much. His relationship with Mihawk can be said to be relatively strong. This guy doesn't seem very popular, maybe he is his only friend. At that time, I really need help. Say hello. With Mihawk's personality, he will definitely help. So don't worry about it for a while. When 7 warlords of the sea can't get along in the future, maybe Mihawk will come to join him. Dressrosa. Doflamingo stepped off a Donquixote family cargo ship. At this time, the port of Dressrosa has become very prosperous. Ships, large and small, are docked in the wharf, and people unloading goods are very lively. My lord. Senor greeted Doflamingo and greeted him. Doflamingo nodded at him and asked with a smile, how are you doing? Are there any problems at home? No problem. Everything is going well, especially when you make a big fuss on Beehive Island and spread the news of Oaku's defeat here, it will go even smoother. Senor reported. If the previous duel between Doflamingo and Charlotte Linlin hadn't fully established the prestige in New World, then this time he and Mihawk had a big fight on Beehive Island, making Oaku's life and death unclear. It can be said that he completely established Doflamingo's reputation in New World. On the way, I chatted with Senor about Dressrosa, and soon, Doflamingo came to King's Heights. Doflamingo reacted quickly when he saw that the magnificent palace had already been built in 7s and 8s, and many workers were laying bricks and decorating it. Pika and the others are back? Doflamingo asked. Yes, thanks to his ability, the palace complex was able to be built so quickly. Quinn and Geisa also came, and brought some new members of the family, Senor said. The new member is a new seed who has passed the training. Doflamingo smiled. Yes. The Senor responded. Then I should meet, and Quinn and the others have not seen each other for a long time. Doflamingo thought for a while. After a short pause, he asked again, by the way, Beckman hasn't come back yet. Not yet. Senor said. But before he finished speaking, the phone bug on Doflamingo's body rang. I took out the phone bug and looked. My good guy. What a coincidence. The person who called the phone bug happened to be Beckman. Picking up the phone bug, Doflamingo asked with a smile, F.U. Furfur, Beckman. Why haven't you come back for so long? Didn't you say that the speed of the Cervantes is at least as fast as that of an armed transport ship? On the other side, Beckman stood on the Cervantes, which was as huge as an island, and couldn't help saying, don't talk about the speed, I haven't even set off from the capital of 7 waters yet. Oh? Doflamingo asked slightly surprised, why? It's been so long, and I haven't set off from the capital of 7 waters. What's the situation? Acceptance. Beckman said bitterly. When I first came here, I should have brought more people. Do you know how long it will take for me to inspect and accept the Cervantes, which is as huge as an island? Master Tom is still serious. He wants to show me all the places, so as to avoid any omissions and future disputes. Hearing Beckman's bitterness here, Doflamingo finally realized it. He only thought that when Beckman arrived in the capital of 7 waters, the ship would be almost finished, and then he would just drive the ship back. Completely ignored the matter of acceptance, according to Cervantes' specifications. This acceptance project is really a big job. I contacted you to talk about this matter. I have only accepted a quarter of the Cervantes at present. According to the current process, it is impossible for me to finish watching this place in less than a month, or even 2 months. So the time to go back should be later. I calculated it. Maybe you will finish the World Summit in Marie Joy's, and I will just be able to pick you up. Beckman complained. Furfur, isn't it just the end of the year? Doflamingo said with a big laugh. But now, it is indeed approaching the end of the year. On his way back, he has heard that some remote franchise countries, whose royal families participating in the World Summit, have begun to march towards Marie Joy's under the protection of the local marine. He came back this time to prepare some information about Dressrosa. After resting, Doflamingo will also leave for Marie Joy's World Summit. Not too far away. After joking and chatting for a while, Beckman hung up the phone, and Doflamingo turned to Senor and said, speaking of which, we, Dressrosa, don't even have a port capable of intercepting the Cervantes. Senor was stunned for a moment, and then said, although the dark port is already under construction, according to Pika's speed, it should not take long to complete it, but even if the dark port is expanded 10 times, it is impossible to carry the Cervantes. Even I think that there is no port in this world that can carry the Cervantes. The Dark Port is a secret port that the Donquixote family started to build after they took control of Rosa. It is underground. To be honest, without Pika's ability, the construction of this Dark Port would be really difficult. However, once the Dark Port is successfully built, it means that Doflamingo has directly built a transfer station for Dark World materials in Rosa, which is very helpful for the development of Donquixote family. But let alone the Dark Port, the entire Rosa is probably not as big as the Cervantes. When the ship stops in the waters around Rosa, it will be like rebuilding an island. Chatting about some things, Doflamingo and Senor walked into the residence of the Donquixote family. My lord. Gladius rushed over excitedly when he saw Doflamingo. Doflamingo looked at Gladius, and was also a little surprised. Why does this kid suddenly look a little taller? Stretching out his hand to stop Gladius' charge, Doflamingo rubbed the guy's hedgehog head and said, "You've become a big guy in a blink of an eye." "I'm old enough to drink now," Gladius said proudly. Thanks to this guy's yelling, many people in the station heard the movement and knew that Doflamingo was back. There is no need to say anything about Diamanti and Virgo, the cadres who have been following Doflamingo in the New World. Quinn, Geisa, Pika, and Jorah were quite excited when they saw Doflamingo. Especially Pika and Cora, after all, are the old family members who follow Doflamingo, seem to be established from Donquixote family. They have never been separated from Doflamingo for so long. After encouraging them a few words, Doflamingo looked at the tall Quinn, and couldn't help but said, "You guy, are you getting fat again?" Quinn himself was very fat and strong at the beginning, but now, he is no longer fat and strong, he is simply a fat balloon. Hearing this, before Quinn could speak, Guy broke the stage and said, "My lord, you don't know. I feel that at least half of our scientific research department's funds have been eaten by him, and he is drinking some red bean soup all day long. If he doesn't drink for a day, he will go crazy. You can cure him." As soon as Guy Saw's words fell, Quinn punched him on the head and said, "Hey, bastard Guy Saw, you can't compare to me in scientific research, so you have to rely on slander to frame me? I can't compare to you." Guy blew up when he heard this. "I'm the world's #1 scientist. What can I not compare to you? Among the family's products, the latest arms are all from my technology." "The world's #1 scientist," Quinn said with a look of disdain. "Let's not say whether you are as good as me, Vegapunk alone is enough to crush you." Although the two are noisy here, Doflamingo can see that the relationship between these two guys is still good. Seeing that they were almost making a fuss, Doflamingo asked, "Have all the scientific research laboratories been transferred?" "Well, it's been transferred. After all, we will also be stationed in New World, and all the laboratories on the North Blue side will be evacuated. The equipment is too expensive," Quinn said with a smile. After chatting about this topic, Quinn suddenly removed his arm, and the style of painting suddenly became weird. "Young master, how is it? My body transformation technology is not ordinary, but can be combined with fruit ability," Quinn said, showing off. To be honest, Doflamingo doesn't quite understand the hobby of transforming himself into a mechanical body like Quinn and Frankie. Seeing Doflamingo's bewildered expression, Quinn thought that Doflamingo was shocked, and immediately flaunted, "Flesh and blood are weak, and machinery is a man's romance. Just like my arm, it has been fully metallized now, not only has many functions that the original limbs could not have, but also got rid of the weakness of the limbs. Even if I am cut on the arm by someone, I will not feel any pain. Without pain, I will not be stimulated and affected, which can greatly improve my combat effectiveness. Next, I am going to carry out a whole body transformation. What laser, fire breathing, electric discharge and so on, because I am going to give myself a set of unique skills. It's a pity that the bastard judge is hiding his secrets. If he can master the genetic coding technology, he can even directly install superpowers," Quinn said here, feeling a little regretful. But he quickly lifted his spirits and said, "But it doesn't matter, Guy and I are ready to reverse Judge's technology. Young master, do you want to try this new trend? I promise, you will never regret it. Imagine that after the transformation is completed, your eyes can emit lasers, your arms can fire cannonballs, and you can disassemble it freely. How romantic it is." Doflamingo's face twitched, and then said, "I can't enjoy this kind of romance, I can only leave it to you to experience. Flesh and flesh are weak. Maybe Quinn's technological development is indeed a very novel direction, but the problem is, his Doflamingo's ability is to play with blood. You ask me to transform myself into a robot. What will I do in the future? Control the oil. But don't tell me, if Quinn's transformation technology is used for the old Whitebeard, that's really something." In the tent, Doflamingo is sitting at the head seat, having a meeting with a large group of family officials. The most urgent task at the moment is to build this palace first. You should pay more attention to this point, Pika, and maximize your ability, Chowla. I'm very relieved to leave the decoration style and art appreciation to you. Doflamingo explained. Aunt Cora is good at art, and she designed the Donquixote family residence on Cervantes Island, which is very good. Doflamingo hopes to continue that style. After chatting about this topic, Doflamingo changed his tone and asked, "You guys went directly from North Blue to dress Rosa through the calm belt this time. How was the situation along the way?" After thinking for a while, Quinn said, "In terms of efficiency alone, it is very powerful." Pika said in a deep voice, "The safety is not bad. Our exploration team is almost inside the calm belt, and opened up a route that can avoid the Sea Kings as much as possible." After a slight pause, Pika added, "However, if you sail within the calm belt, it is impossible to completely avoid the Sea Kings." The rest of the people also quickly expressed their opinions. All in all, the North Blue calm belt dress Rosa route is very important. Once this route can be opened, it will be equivalent to connecting the original resources with the current resources, and at the same time, it will greatly expand the market controlled by Donquixote family. Of course, the most important thing is that such repeated exploration can differentiate calm belt in detail, and finally lay a solid foundation for the development of calm belt. Next, business can't just be placed in the dark world. We also need to expand the legal business. I plan to form a national caravan in the name of Dress Rosa. This matter involves the arrangement of the Fishmen Island. Now, how is our cooperation with the Fishmen Island going? Doflamingo asked.
Senor quickly reported. After you said it last time, young master, this matter has already been handed over to the Minister of Finance Tyrios. I asked about it the day before yesterday. At present, our Dress Rosa has signed a letter of intent with Dragon Palace City. Everything is going smoothly. Dragon Palace City will also be formed.
While listening to the reports of his subordinates, Doflamingo kept recording something on the table. Virgo crossed his legs, sat on the chair underneath, looked at the busy figure of Doflamingo, and said to Diamanti beside him, "I see. The young master not only needs to be accompanied by the maid team, but also needs to be accompanied by a secretary." Doflamingo's daily life is well taken care of by the maids, there is nothing to say, but in dealing with affairs, there is indeed a lack of some helpers. Already in North Blue, he pays more attention to practice, so most of the things are delegated to the cadres, and he doesn't need to spend too much energy. But now, he is not only the leader of Donquixote family, but also the king of Dress Rosa, and Doflamingo also wants to build and expand his sphere of influence. So many things, he has to do it himself. It is also because of this that he seems to be busy now. When Diamanti heard this, he immediately said, "Yes, I think so too, and I'm already making arrangements. This time, among the new seedlings of the family, there is a role that is very suitable to be a secretary." After the meeting, didn't Dover say that he wants to meet these, new blood? Let's mention it to him then. Has it been arranged? Virgo asked a little curiously. Who is it? What's your name? That's the little girl with long emerald green hair, called Moen, Diamanti said. Before Diamanti left North Blue, he was in charge of cultivating new seedlings in North Blue. He felt that Monet had great potential very early on. Although she doesn't know anything about swordsmanship, but that girl is very smart, and also has perseverance and perseverance. No matter what tasks are assigned to her, she can always complete the tasks meticulously and within the specified time. Of course, although there is no talent in kendo, Diamanti discovered that this little girl named Monet seemed to have something in this regard when she was teaching Haki power. Originally, I was going to give Monet a small talk, but because I wanted to fight the Grand Line with Doflamingo, I didn't have any further details. This time, Diamanti heard that Pika and the others had brought some newcomers, and when he saw Monet inside, he was very satisfied. Knowing that Monet had successfully passed the screening of family members, he also thought of the young lord's side. It is true that there is currently a lack of a secretary to help. Even if Virgo doesn't mention it, Diamanti is ready to arrange it. Soon, Doflamingo explained some things, and then said, "By the way, during the time I was away, how was the matter about the Big Mom pirates handled? Has Katakuri gone back?" Senor is still at know-it-all, and immediately replied, "It has been dealt with. The Big Mom pirates did publicly announce the request for trade interoperability with our Donquixote family, and sent people to send 2 devil fruits. We have also put Katakuri back as agreed." "What kind of devil fruit are the 2? Doflamingo asked a little curiously. "One is the ancient species of snapping turtle form of Zone's tortoise fruit, and 10 are the steel fruit of Paramecia," so young Oro replied. Listening to this, Doflamingo was silent for a moment. "You said that these fruits are very delicious. They are not really good, and indeed belong to a somewhat high-grade type, but you said that these 2 fruits are particularly strong, but it seems that they are not very strong." However, Doflamingo is still looking forward to the fruit of that ancient plant. It has to be said that Charlotte Linlin is very good at taking advantage of loopholes, and the fruit she gave can be said to be above the passing line. Okay, I understand, then let's expose this matter. Doflamingo finally nodded in response. Later, we discussed some miscellaneous things, and soon, Doflamingo learned about what happened during this period of time when he was not around. When it's done, it's gone. As soon as I come back, I'll toss with you about this. I'm a little hungry now. Let's go. If you don't have anything to eat, come and eat with me. Doflamingo greeted. However, it was obvious that most of the cadres had eaten, and they still had to be busy with their work at hand. Only Virgo and Diamanti followed Doflamingo and left the camp. Young master. Diamanti said as soon as he went out, the family has new blood joining, do you want to have a meal with them? These new seedlings, who can go through a lot of screening and become members of the Donquixote family are not ordinary family members. Basically, once they come in, they can enjoy the treatment of cadres. Because they all passed the background check and possessed certain talents, and in the past few years of training, they have been instilled with the concept of being loyal to the family and serving the young master. People with ideas and beliefs. Look, Doflamingo then remembered that he had indeed mentioned this matter before, so he nodded and said, okay, let's arrange it. Seeing that Doflamingo agreed, Diamanti quickly took out the phone bug and started making contact arrangements. When Doflamingo walked to the restaurant, several new members were already waiting there. Looking at their expressions, they looked very excited, as if it was an honor to have dinner with Doflamingo. After several years of assessment and training, this time they successfully passed the screening and became the new seedlings of the Donquixote family. There are 3 people in total, 1 male and 2 females. The man seemed to be the oldest, he must be 17 or 18 years old, with short blonde hair, he looked like a bastard, and he had the temperament of a vicious party. When Doflamingo saw him, his expression was slightly surprised and puzzled, because he recognized this person. In the original story, North Blue Street stalker and gangster decided to go out to sea to become a pirate because of his admiration for Doflamingo, and his dog Bellamy wanted to join the Donquixote family as a cadre. In my impression, this guy didn't become a member of the Donquixote family until the end. Why did he suddenly change his identity and appear in front of Doflamingo as a new seedling? However, after a short period of surprise and doubt, Doflamingo didn't ask any more questions, and looked at the other 2 girls. One was a little older and looked similar to Bellamy, with long emerald green hair, a delicate face, and a slim figure. Doflamingo also recognized it, and it was Monet who ate the Logia snow fruit in the original story. And the other one is a little lowly, who doesn't seem to have grown up yet, it's Baby5. After saying hello, Doflamingo said with a smile, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I welcome you to join the Donquixote family. From today onwards, we are a family. Yes, my lord. The 3 said excitedly. We sat down and had a meal together, during which Doflamingo got to know the 3 of them a bit. First of all, none of the 3 of them ate the devil fruit and became capable users, all of them were blank paper. Secondly, they really admire and awe Doflamingo, especially Bellamy. Doflamingo doubts that this guy will become the second Gladius and become his little fanboy. Young master, Monet is very careful and has outstanding abilities, and he almost passed the cultural class with full marks. Diamanti said suddenly while eating. Doflamingo thought for a while and said, so what do you mean? Virgo followed up and said, what we mean is, do you need a secretary to help you with some trivial matters, young master? If necessary, Monet is very suitable. Hearing this, Doflamingo looked at Monet, and saw that Monet looked at him expectantly. Then Doflamingo nodded and said, yes, I will ask you to take care of me from now on. After getting an affirmative answer, Monet blushed and said excitedly, yes, my lord, please leave it to me. Early in the morning, Doflamingo opened his eyes, today is a rare early rise. After washing up, just after coming out of the bathroom, Doflamingo saw a little lowly maid standing by the bed with a set of neatly folded clothes, waiting for him. Oh. Baby5, are you on the morning shift again today? Doflamingo greeted with some amusement. Baby5, since this little girl was promoted to the cadre of Donquixote family, because she is too young, she is about the same age as Trafalgar Law, so it is impossible to be placed in any administrator. Especially her character is so outrageous. That's right. Exactly the same as in the original story, Baby5 is a character that will not reject others, and whoever feels that he is needed by others will be very happy. Anyway, it's the little girl who's in Doflamingo's maids now. My lord, this is today's outfit. Baby5 handed the clothes to Doflamingo first, and then said, in order to be the first person my lord sees when I get up early in the morning, I have already applied for the morning shift. It is said that she is applying for the morning shift. In fact, regardless of her young age, Baby5 is the only cadre in the Doflamingo maid team, so theoretically speaking, She is the boss of the maid team. However, with this character, it is obvious that she cannot be a superior, but the other maids dare not refuse her. That's really hard work for you. Doflamingo put on his clothes and rubbed Baby Five's head. Speaking of which, what do you usually do after off work? Doflamingo asked casually while standing in front of the changing mirror, wearing a tie. Play with little Lami and Luo. Baby Five said naturally. Because the base camp was moved to New World, the Trafalgar family moved to dress Rosa together. So far, op fruit has still not been found, and the platinum lead disease of Trafalgar Law and others is getting more and more serious. Fortunately, Dr. Nelson's medical skills are very superb. Although the platinum lead disease cannot be cured, it can also relieve the corresponding symptoms, making Luo and his sister feel much better. Trafalgar Law itself can also be regarded as a member of the Donquixote family. After all, his father is now Doflamingo's ship doctor. Diamanti often gives special training to Trafalgar Law when he is fine in dress Rosa. Because Diamanti believes that Trafalgar Law has the potential of a swordsman. However, it is a little regrettable that because of platinum lead disease, Trafalgar Law is currently in poor physical condition, so he is unable to train for a long time, so far, the experience of Tomita has been slow. But this kid is also very easy to learn. At the age of 10, he has already started to study medical knowledge crazily. He is determined to become a great doctor or something. After getting dressed, Doflamingo quickly opened the door and was about to go out, but as soon as he went out, he saw two guys, Gladius and Bellamy, standing at the door of his room, one left and one right, as if they were competing. Doflamingo looked at the situation, and sighed a little helplessly. The dark circles under your eyes are almost turning into smoky makeup. Even if you two are angry, you should pay attention to your body. If you continue like this, you may suddenly die suddenly. Then I must die later than Bellamy, Gladius said stubbornly. No, I won't die at all. I will always guard by the young lord's side, and I will become the young lord's most loyal guard, Bellamy shouted. As Doflamingo expected, Bellamy successfully evolved into the second Gladius. No, it can't be said that, in short, this guy worships Doflamingo crazily, and after joining the family, he aspires to become Doflamingo's most loyal guard. After he released this bold statement, he immediately angered Gladius, who called himself the young lord's personal guard. Sure enough, his attributes conflicted. Both of them felt that they were the ones who admired and loyal to the young lord, so they quarreled when they met. Now they are still competing, who can stand guard for Doflamingo longer. So much so that these two guys have been with Doflamingo, inseparable, without going to sleep, for 4 days. During the day, when Doflamingo went out, they followed Doflamingo. At night, when Doflamingo went back to rest, the two of them stood at the door and competed with each other. Seriously, Doflamingo was worried that the two of them would fight to the death. Not bothering the two guys, Doflamingo quickly walked out of the hallway. This is the temporary camp of King's Heights. Once you leave the corridor, you will be outside. My lord, good morning. A crisp voice came into Doflamingo's ears from the door. That's right, Monet. At this time, Monet is already Doflamingo's secretary. On weekdays, he is responsible for helping Doflamingo arrange the itinerary, recording some important points, and organizing files, to assist Doflamingo with some trivial matters. Monet himself is very tall, with a pair of long legs that are extremely dazzling. Now, in order to better adapt to the role of secretary, Monet even made himself an exquisite black lady's suit, matching it with black silk and high heels. Good guy. He is obviously a little girl, but he just feels like a royal sister. Good morning. Doflamingo smiled and nodded to Monet very gently. After saying hello, Monet quickly stuck to Doflamingo's side and said, Master, today's itinerary is. Listening to Monet's energetic voice, Doflamingo also felt that the sleepiness of getting up early has disappeared a lot. Television speech to the whole nation, Monet said about this matter. But soon, Doflamingo raised his hand and interrupted. Cancel this itinerary, just arrange someone to speak. I don't like this kind of link very much. Monet would never question Doflamingo's decision, so as soon as Doflamingo's voice fell, she quickly responded, Yes, my lord. After speaking, he changed the itinerary directly. Then, in the evening, you should have dinner with King Riku Dold and others. Mo too finished reporting today's itinerary. Riku Dold former king of Dress Rosa, has now abdicated to Doflamingo, and his youngest daughter, Violet, has concluded a marriage contract with Doflamingo. It is precisely because of such a marriage contract that Doflamingo's ascension to the throne of Dress Rosa appears to be particularly stable. It can be said that from a legal point of view, the last hidden danger has been resolved. But Violet is still very young, she is only 10 years old this year, so the marriage can be postponed for a long time. This is what Doflamingo is happy to see. After all, This engagement is mainly for profit. I see. Doflamingo replied. Speaking of which, it's been a long time since I haven't seen the Liku Wong family, and I don't know how they are doing now. It should be pretty good, right? After all, Doflamingo directly supported their family according to the benefits of the Duke. This standard of living is even better than when they were royals. King Liku is still very sensible. Since he abdicated, he has never caused any trouble for Doflamingo, and he has never had any contact with the elite in Dressrosa. Whether he did it on purpose for Doflamingo to see, or something else, but as far as the results go, Doflamingo is happy. Soon after entering the camp, Doflamingo began to quickly handle today's government affairs. Although Monet had only been a secretary for a few days, she was really careful and talented in this area. She was able to assist Doflamingo and handle documents very fluently. After more than 2 hours, Doflamingo felt a little tired from reading a lot of documents, so he reached out and rubbed the corners of his eyes. Monet winked. Seeing Doflamingo's movements, he quickly walked behind Doflamingo, and gently kneaded his shoulders to relax his muscles. For this, Doflamingo did not refuse, and after enjoying it for a while, Doflamingo called out, "Bellamy." As soon as he finished speaking, Bellamy, as if he was always ready, immediately opened the door curtain, walked in and said, "My lord, please order." "Don't be so pretentious." Doflamingo smiled and waved his hands, then said, "Come and sit." Bellamy was not polite to Doflamingo. Doflamingo asked him to sit, and he immediately went to the sofa and sat down. "Speaking of which, I haven't even asked you yet, have you considered becoming an ability user?" Doflamingo asked casually. Bellamy asked in surprise, "Are you going to reward me with the precious devil fruit? Do I also have the qualifications to become a capable person?" "Huh?" Doflamingo asked with some doubts. "Didn't Gladius tell you? As long as you become a core member of the family, if you want to become a power user, you have the right to choose your favorite ability from the devil fruit in the family collection." Bellamy was also taken aback, and then said, "When he talks to me, I basically don't pay attention to him, so maybe I didn't hear about it." Doflamingo said helplessly, "Gladius is a very nice person, and everyone likes him very much. If you can get along with him, you can definitely become friends. As long as he is willing to admit that I am the most loyal person to you, young master, then I am willing to be his friend, but obviously, he does not admit it," Bellamy said angrily. The corners of Doflamingo's mouth twitched slightly, and Monet on the side laughed secretly when he heard this. She felt that Bellamy and Gladius were naive. Who was the most loyal to the young master? Could this kind of thing be debated? In the end, it's not all about performance. I always felt that Bellamy and Gladius were out of their minds, and Doflamingo didn't want to talk to them about becoming friends anymore. He picked up a list from the table, handed it to Bellamy and said, "Go back and ask Diamanti. Where is the Devil Fruit illustrated book? Then you can compare the illustrated books based on this list. These are the Devil Fruit abilities currently held by our Donquixote family. If you like it, just pick one and eat it." "Yes, thank you, my lord," Bellamy said excitedly. For Bellamy, Doflamingo actually admires this guy very much. Among other things, he is indeed his diehard fan. It is estimated that no matter what is told to him, he will do his best to complete it. As for Bellamy's strength and ability, it's not particularly outstanding, but it can't be said to be bad either. In the original story, he has always been a toy that Doflamingo used for entertainment. Now, since he has become a member of the Donquixote family, Doflamingo also decided to train this kid well. First of all, since he is willing to become a demon fruit power, then make a list for him to choose. Secondly, Doflamingo is also going to arrange for Haki and other physical training. Well, in fact, Doflamingo doesn't need to care too much. Bellamy can pass through layers of screening, and finally stay as a member of the family. In fact, he has already mastered Haki, martial arts and so on. In the follow-up, as long as you don't be lazy and practice more, if you can match it with a powerful devil fruit, you can also take on the title of Cadre. After Bellamy left, Doflamingo asked, "Speaking of which, what about you? Do you intend to become a capable person?" Monet paused for a while when Doflamingo rubbed his shoulders. She thought for a moment and said, "I haven't actually thought about it yet. Lord Diamanti once said that I am more talented in Haki. Indeed, in terms of Haki, I am indeed better than Bellamy and the rest of them, but compared to fighting and killing, I prefer to be with you, young master, to deal with these trivial matters. What you like to do has no conflict with improving your own strength. It can even be said that only when your strength is strong enough, you can do what you like." Doflamingo smiled. "Is it the same as being a secretary?" Monet asked, tilting his head. "When everything is like this," Doflamingo responded calmly. "I see, then I will work hard to practice and strive to become a powerful secretary," Monet said with a smile. After resting for a while, Doflamingo finished some government affairs again, and then left the camp, taking Monet to find Quinn and the others. Since Doflamingo became the king of Dressrosa and the Donquixote family occupied the entire Dressrosa, the large-scale experimental base of Quinn and others has been built, and it was the first completed project not long ago. When Quinn and the others came from North Blue, they also brought all the expensive scientific research equipment they bought back then. At present, the Scientific Research Center of Donquixote family has been transferred from North Blue to Dressrosa. One of Doflamingo's itineraries today is to visit Quinn and Geis's research room and see what kind of black technology the Donquixote family is currently mastering. To be honest, this kind of body modification technology can indeed raise the upper limit of a person's strength in a very short period of time, but the cost is relatively high. For example, my alloy arm is made of very rare memory metals. Whether it is flexibility or firmness, it is very. Quinn introduced. At this time, Doflamingo was standing in front of a mechanical skeleton display case, listening to Quinn talking about his transformation technology here. Although he didn't intend to transform himself into a machine, Doflamingo was still a little interested in Quinn's technology. To a certain extent, this technology can indeed raise the upper limit of a person's strength. Take Bellamy as an example. He has a certain talent, but he is not outstanding in all aspects. With a good ability, he is enough to become a cadre of the Donquixote family, but he probably cannot reach the top rank. Because his upper limit is right there. But if Bellamy has reached the limit, and then carries out some body transformation, let him master some armed forces such as laser, fire breathing, and electric discharge, and then turn the bones into steel alloys. Really, his strength will indeed be raised a bit, and his upper limit will be expanded out of thin air. Maybe he can only become a cadre in the first place. With this transformation, there is the possibility of becoming a big cadre. Also, bumps are unavoidable when wandering in the sea. Although the family members have not said that there is a missing arm or broken leg, who can say for sure? Once such a serious injury or disability occurs, will Quinn's technique come in handy? In addition, Quinn himself is constantly improving his strength through these transformations, so after listening to it for a long time, Doflamingo praised and agreed. Yes, then you can do it well, do something powerful, and the family will support you. Quinn said happily after hearing the words. I knew it, you must be able to see the value, young master. To be honest, Quinn is very lucky now that he chose to join Doflamingo at the beginning. Look, how long has it been? Doflamingo has made a career in New World. After chatting for a few words, Doflamingo came to Guy's side again. Guy is not the same as Quinn. Quinn is crazy and obsessed with transforming people. Guy has a bit of a natural evil feeling. He's obsessed with building weapons of mass destruction or something. As soon as he got started, Doflamingo was introduced to gas bombs, deflagration bombs that can ignite stones, and other messy things. What's the market prospect? Doflamingo asked, weighing the gas bomb in his hand. Monet, who was following behind him, looked at this scene and was a little frightened, for fear that the young master would not be able to hold his hand firmly, and the gas bomb would fall to the ground and explode, poisoning them all to death. But it was obvious that Doflamingo was not afraid at all, and Guy also looked indifferent, boasting there. The market prospect can be said to be quite good. We once launched a batch of such products in the dark world of North Blue, and they were quickly sold out. However, I haven't built a complete production line yet, so the cost is relatively high. Once it can be mass-produced, the profit margin will be even greater, Guy said confidently. Well, the arms business is the most important thing, not only these evil weapons, but also the regular standard equipment. You had to give me more food recently. I'm going to see if I can take the right to supply Marines equipment from the government of the world. Doflamingo pushed the mirror frame on the bridge of his nose. Guy scatter? Did I hear something wrong just now? Take what down Marines equipment supply right? Is that something a pirate can think about? However, he saw his young master's confident expression, and after hesitating for a while, Guy still didn't dare to question Doflamingo's thoughts, and patted his chest to assure him. Leave it to me, young master. In fact, at present, the Donquixote family is able to produce most of the first-class weapons and equipment in North Blue's military production line. Now if they want to become Marines arms supplier, the Donquixote family must first consider not technical issues, because technology is not a problem, what they have to consider is production capacity. Marine is not a small force of cats or dogs, who can be satisfied casually, but Marine has countless Marine bases in the sea. Just looking at the number of personnel, Marine has at least 1 million, even tens of millions, or even more soldiers in the world. After all, judging from the top battle, Marine recruited 100,000 generals and officers from all over the world in one breath, and gathered Naval Headquarters Marineford to participate in the decisive battle with the Whitebeard pirates. 100,000 generals and officers, at least you will be counted as a major. A major must have at least 1,000 soldiers under his command. 100,000 majors. You can count the Marines' troops, it's scary. Because of the strength of the army, the amount of armaments Marine needs is also very scary. To provide Marines with arms, the productivity of the Donquixote family is far from enough now. It is necessary to build a large number of production lines in New World to make it possible. After discussing some issues with Guy about setting up a new production line, Doflamingo suddenly saw a strange devil fruit locked in a showcase. This is? Doflamingo asked with a raised brow. The man-made devil fruit technology has something to do with the bloodline factor theory. A subject I studied before, but although I don't really want to admit it, in this respect, Vegapunk is indeed better than me. Guy shrugged. Soon, Guy saw that Doflamingo was very interested, and introduced the situation to Doflamingo in detail. As in the original story, this technology can't be considered particularly successful, and it can only produce Zone's abilities at present. From this point of view alone, Vegapunk is indeed much more powerful than Guy Serra. Guy Serra made some junk, but Vegapunk can derive this technology and endow Seraph with powerful combat power. But how should I put it? Although the technology that Guy spreads is full of broken things, such as a hippopotamus with a mouth on its belly, and a strange man whose arms become the neck of a giraffe. But I can't stand it, so many people like it. Someone really wants to be this big customer. If you want to say who this client is, it must be Kaido, the director of the New World Zoo. So at this time Doflamingo looked at this man-made devil fruit, and was thinking in his heart, should he industrialize this thing and sell it to Kaido for money? Just when Doflamingo was thinking about how to cheat money, the phone bug Monet was carrying rang. That's right, Doflamingo has evolved now, and he has a secretary with him, so Monet will take care of the phone bug. When Monet took out the phone bug, Doflamingo glanced at the phone bug, raised his eyebrows and said, Marine World Summit.